Shell Sport, first of the two Shell Sport races today, the finals here at Bay Park. On the front of the grid, number 11 is Jeff Burrows in a car that may look familiar, the one that Reg Cook used to run. Right beside him is Warren Steele in car number 3. Now Warren Steele leads the championship with 75 points from Mark Rutherford on 43, Warren Burt on 37, Phil Henley on 36. Jeff Burrows has only 6 points in the championship, but he has qualified on pole here. Reg Cook obviously goes very quick at Bay Park.
Yes, Jeff has had rotten luck with the car so far, and at Pukekohe he managed to come second at the Grand Prix meeting, and at this meeting he's come down here. A bit of work is done on the cylinder head and raised the compression ratio during the week, and here he is driving exceptionally well in a car that's only driven twice before, and he's on pole position.
They're away in the Shell Sport race. Drag up to the big sweeper at the end of the front straight into turn 1 and straight through Warren Steele in the first place. Burrows behind him.
Warren Burt's in third place, Malcolm Webb's in fourth, and Kieran Wills in fifth, with Don Halliday and his 2-litre Escort coming up in sixth place.
Very, very close competition in the Shell Sport. Burrows trying to get up fast now.
Warren Burt, Starlet in third place, about to pass Jeff Burrows going under braking down the end of the back straight, but Jeff braked late, and they're very close together in this corner. It'll be interesting to see who comes out first, second and third.
Very, very close competition in the Shell Sport at this stage. Still number 3, Warren Steele.
Business and Bluebird. This is a new car built this year to the latest rules. We call them Group A Shell Sport rules. Warren Bird's in second place in his Toyota Starlet. Jeff Burrows in third. This is Sunny Malcolm Bird in another Toyota Starlet. Listen to the Toyotas at the moment.
Well, Warren Steele starting to pull away just now. In first place, certainly hasn't broken a straight line. He gets caught up in the big sweeper.
Warren Bird from Timaru has always done exceptionally well at Shell Sport in the last 5 or 6 years. He's had positions like second and third over on the championship. But he'll probably be one of the best drivers in this field, and it's quite often in underpowered cars. A lot of races. He's on the races down at Timaru.
Good battle going on between second and third places. Jeff Burrows, who qualified on pole, hasn't been able to get to the front yet in the race. It's a car you know a lot about, Reg Cook. It's your old car, number 11.
Yes, it's a 1600 Sunny with a pushrod engine in it. It's got about 180 brake horsepower, and he's having a very difficult job keeping in touch with the starlets of Warren Burt and Malcolm Webb. Now Malcolm Webb's just come to the picture in third place. It's car number 44. At the moment we see Warren Steele in the front, Warren Burt in second, and Malcolm Webb in third place in the starlets.
Into turn 1 again, the big sweeper.
Jeff Burrows is having a bit of a problem. He hasn't done many races in this car, and it's very difficult in this field where these people do 9 rounds of the championship. This is the 6th round of the championship with another 3 to go. These people are very race fit, and if you turn up halfway through a championship and you haven't done the earlier rounds, it's very easy to get left behind.
Well, for Shell Sport, this is an enormous lead that he's pulling out.
Well, Warren Steele has done 7 years of Shell Sport racing. He's a very determined and capable driver. He's capable of going quick from lap 1, and his laps will be very, very consistency, and I'm sure he's not actually doing the fastest lap. His lap time will be very consistent, which is what is allowing him out in the lead. Back at second and third and fourth, these drivers are fighting each other on the circuit, consequently holding each other up, blocking each other, not taking the fastest lines and allowing Warren Steele to get away. But Malcolm Webb, who's just got car number 44, the Toyota Starlet, in the second place, is driving exceptionally well. Used to be from Hastings, is now from Palmerston North, and is driving very well, holding second place. Warren Burt, a more experienced driver, back in third, and Jeff Burrows back in fourth place.
Reg, that track is obviously not as slippery as it was yesterday afternoon or earlier this morning. I see when they're coming into the front straight, they're not quite as wide as some of the cars that looked almost to lose the track.
Yes, well, yesterday I think the sports sedans dropped a lot of oil on the circuit, and with the rain last night, the oil's been washed away, so that the track's not as slippery. But I'm sure after the sports sedan races and some of the other races today, the track will get very slippery, and probably during the Pacific races it'll be difficult for the single series races.
So Warren Steele looking like consolidating his points lead. Still Malcolm Webb at second place.
Warren Burt from Timaru in third place, and Jeff Burrows in second, as I said earlier, back and forth, and pole position. I would expect Jeff to be able to do better than this, and go pull up as the race progresses, but maybe something's gone wrong in the car. Maybe he's flat spotted a tyre or something like that. Jeff qualified 60 yesterday, he's held up by not being able to get his best time.
Warren Steele, as we said, with the lead, 75 to 43 over Mark Rutherford, who's not here in the championship, so it looks like a fairly easy win if he can keep circulating today. Another win on the way for Warren Steele.
Warren Steele has managed to get his points on reliability this year. He hasn't really been on pole, and he hasn't been the fastest racer, but by finishing all the races, he's got this enormous points lead, and here he is. He won at the Grand Prix 2 weeks ago, and looks like repeating the performance here today.
That's the order after 4 laps. Warren Steele in the Nissan Bluebird from Malcolm Webb in the Starlet. Warren Burt in another Starlet.
Jeff Burrows coming right down the inside of Warren Burt and Malcolm Webb there under braking, and he's gone off. Very late braking move that didn't pull off. Well, Jeff won't be happy about that. He's let Kieran Wills, with his Nissan 2-litre 160J, get into 4th place, and Jeff has dropped back to 5th place, and he won't be happy about that at all. He's also nudged another car there. Notice the right front light is not there.
Warren Steele pulling out an even bigger lead as they dice for 2nd, 3rd and 4th places. Warren Steele being allowed to go. Let's have a look back at that gap now.
Well, Warren Burt's experience has got through there, and it looks like Jeff Burrows probably under braking, and when he went off has forced Malcolm Webb out, so Malcolm's dropped a place as well. Malcolm Webb only started racing this car in Shellsport last year and has managed to develop in the winter and come from about 6th and 7th position to front position in races, so he'll be very pleased with it.
Along with the Gaggle and Nissan's a very popular car, the Toyota Starlet, in many forms of motorsport, including rally.
Yes, Paul Adams used to race these and rally these cars, and exceptionally well in international rallies and in the national championship. Was always a front runner. Warren Steele in the lead with his Nissan Bluebird. Second is Warren Burt and his Toyota Starlet. Third is Kieran Wills, taken 3rd place from Jeff Burrows. Warren Steele's car is built to the latest rules, which incorporates a lot of Group A suspension modifications. Has approximately 210 brake horsepower, top speed at Puka Cove about 135 miles an hour.
Coming down for the checkered flag this time on the last lap. There's the checkered flag for Warren Steele, who wins the Shellsport race, consolidates his points lead. 2nd place Warren Burt, and 3rd place Kieran Wills. So Warren Steele goes into an even bigger lead in the championship, and with Mark Rutherford not here to challenge him, it looks as though it's going to be a very easy cruise to a championship win.
Yes, it's a great credit to Greg Lancaster and Warren Steele have got together and made a team which is called the Brownie Motor Car. To come out and win so many races they have this year and get such a lead, which is a normally competitive company. It's a credit to the team that they've been able to do this. Warren Steele very happy with that.
If you look at the qualifying times, Jeff Burrows qualified first at 1 minute and 6 dead. The next to him was 1:06.7 with Warren Steele, and then 1:06.9 Warren Burt. The three of them very, very close indeed, but it looked as though Jeff Burrows might have an advantage having that quicker qualifying time. Come the race, and that's the way it went. Warren Steele wins, Warren Burt 2nd, and Kieran Wills 3rd.
Very happy Warren Steele.
As in the race.
It's interesting to note today, they might have a problem. They had 37 qualifiers, so it'll be interesting to see how many of these cars they actually let start. And also the first qualifier, Wayne Huxford, is a Wellingtonian. The second qualifier is Trevor Crowe from the South Island. The third qualifier is Avon Hyde from the South Island. The fourth qualifier is Ian Algie from Auckland. And the fifth qualifier is Don Grinley from Christchurch. So we have in the first 5 qualifiers, we have 3 South Islanders and 2 North Islanders.
And there's always interesting competition between the South Islanders and the North Islanders. They have slightly different regulations and different names for their competition. The cars end up being competitive with each other, and always a good grudge match between the South Islanders and the North Islanders, who have gone their separate ways in years gone by in the development of these cars. The lap record, by the way, is still held here by Leo Leonard's PDL Mustang, which many fans of motorsport will remember was an exceptionally fast car. 56.7 was the lap record that it still holds, which is a lap average of 85.6 miles an hour. Now that was set quite some years ago, and as we said, Wayne Huxford, with a 2-second advantage in qualifying over the next fastest qualifier, Trevor Crowe, is still half a second away.
The time that Wayne Huxford has done, though, is an exceptionally good time, because when that Mustang was built, it had a 6-litre, all aluminium engine, and it was a mega-dollar outfit. At the time, the Mustang was the quickest car in Australasia, whereas Wayne Huxford has built a 5-litre engine, not a 6-litre engine. It's an X-Fauna 5000 engine, been around for a long time, and here he is being super competitive and nearly as quick as a car that had another 1,000 cc's and was probably worth 3 times as much money. And Wayne Huxford would have to be the protege of the person that goes home, works hard, and builds his own car in a cheap way and is very, very competitive without spending $1 million.
They had a little hold up on the grid as they got rid of 1 or 2 US cars from the Shell Sport race. They're starting up now and ready to go. On the front of the grid there you can see Avon Hyde's Commodore with the 350 Chev V8 in it. A number of interesting cars here. 23 there is Terry O'Brien, qualified at 65.6. A good spread, as you can see, of machinery on the grid here. A lot of different cars, and very few of them have under the bonnet what they appear to be. Avon Hyde's Commodore, which is right up the front there, is a 350 Chev powered machine. Wayne Huxford's vehicle is 5-litre powered. Is Avon Hyde's Commodore. Trevor Crowe's, as you probably know if you've been watching along with the series, is a Starlet with a lengthened wheelbase and an Oldsmobile motor. That's it there. Trevor Crowe, he's the man I'm watching in this race, because in terms of ability, he is probably amongst the top very cream group of New Zealand drivers in whatever he drives. An exceptional competitor. And if that Starlet looks as though it's a little longer in the wheelbase than a normal one, it is. It has been lengthened at the wheelbase.
The South Island drivers are running to what is known as Oscar rules, which they've had for approximately 10 years. And the North Island drivers virtually run to what they call sports sedan rules, which is anything goes. Trevor Crowe has had a tremendous amount of experience in big saloon racing in Oscar for about 6 years, and had built before a 5-litre Toyota Corolla, which went very quickly. And having built a car before many years ago, when he built the Starlet, he knew exactly how to take advantage of the rules. So he widened the wheelbase, lengthened the wheelbase, put the maximum flares that you can put on it, put the smallest engine that you can get in to suit the weight restrictions that they have. And there was also a class requirement in Oscar of 4.2 litres, so Trevor Crowe made a 5 Oldsmobile engine, stretched it out to 4.1 litres.
Yes, a number of competitors in all forms of motorsport, including jet motor racing, have used the 3.5-litre alloy V8 motors that come from Rovers, originally from Oldsmobiles and Buicks, and were later used in the Leyland P76. The version that Trevor Crowe uses is the Oldsmobile, simply because it has more head studs and therefore seems to be more reliable. That's Wayne Huxford on the front of the grid there, the pole qualifier. Should I say Brett Willis, car number 11.
Well, they're going to have a bit of a problem here. Some of these cars haven't gone out already, and they're letting the last of the cars out, and the first part of the grid have already done 1 lap. So people like Wayne Huxford and Avon Hyde, their cars will be sitting on the grid, and they're liable to overheat while they're sitting here waiting for the other cars to go around. So it'll be interesting to see whether or not we have to have another warm-up lap to allow these cars to cool down. I could see a definite problem coming up.
We've said a little about the mechanical features of these cars, but in terms of raceability, Reg, at the front of that field we have some very experienced drivers: Wayne Huxford, Trevor Crowe, Avon Hyde and Ian Algie, and Don Grindley here that have mixed it up a little bit. Despite the difference in competitiveness of these cars, I think the drivers will make the difference, because all 4 at the front are very, very hard chargers and give nothing.
Well, Trevor Crowe has proved himself in racing and rallying to be one of New Zealand's top drivers. Avon Hyde is a man who's much older, been around motorsport and done all sorts of motorsports, came back to saloon car racing, and people said, oh, he'll be too old, he won't be competitive. And I think his age is about 44 years of age, and he came out in the V8 Commodore and was competitive straight away. And it just goes to show that you can take a break from motorsport and come back, and that's exactly what Avon Hyde has done.
One of the intriguing cars down there is Ian Algie's Alfetta. If you have a look at a little wider shot, he sits in the back seat to drive it. It's got an enormous V8 motor stuck right where you would normally expect to have the gearbox and sit to drive, and he sits right at the back. Down there on the grid now, Graham Booth is with him. Let's get a word.
Well, this would certainly have to be one of the most outlandish cars in the race. Ian Algey's gesturing to me at the moment. We'll try to get a word with him, but the noise of the engine down here is really terrific. We'll see if he can just cut the engine for a second. Ian, this is a pretty wild sort of a car. Now, tell us something about it. We've got the engine in here alongside us, haven't we?
Yeah, it's got a mid-mounted aluminum Millerton engine in it. It's a 305 cubic inch, and it's doing about 540, 550 horse, somewhere there.
It must be pretty traumatic driving from the back seat with something like 550 horsepower sitting in front of you here.
Yeah, when I first started driving it, it was a little bit of a problem, but I've learned to sort of overlook it and pretend that it's not there type of thing, you know. But it's not too bad.
Ian, best of luck for the event.
Thanks very much.
Ian Algey, who is also a very, very talented driver, has had this Alfetta circulating very, very quickly. He's the 4th fastest qualifier with a 60.1. Going through that front again, 57 dead for Wayne Huxford, 59.1 for Trevor Crowe, 60 dead for Avon Hyde, and 60.1 for Ian Algey. So certainly 2nd, 3rd, 4th are very, very close indeed. 60.1 Ian Algey, 60.3 Don Grindley, and on the same time Ralph Mossman. Don Gridley's car is an interesting one too. In previous years he has run a turbocharger on the RX-7 with a 13V motor. This time, that's it, the yellow one there, Don Grindley from Christchurch. This time he is running a Rodney Millen 13V motor, stage 3 with peripheral ports, but without the turbocharger. He's found it more reliable, and we all know that Rodney Millen's motors have been reliable in the past. He's had no trouble with this other than when they've had the turbocharger on it. Running about 17 or 18 pounds boost. It has gone very, very fast a couple of times and then just gone back. A half-minute board up.
Well, we're going to see an exciting Sport Sedan race now. We've got the best of the North Island and the South Island. Big grunters all in one grid with a huge field about to take off in a spectacular of brake horsepower and rubber smoke.
Right on the front there, Wayne Huxford in the Ford Capri 5 litre. Have a look at the crowd. They'll stand up as these fellows start. The flag is up, 4 seconds, ready to drop. Away in the quick pick Sport Sedans. Trevor Crowe getting a quick start, moving over just a little. Ian Algey on the outside of him. Avon Hyde through there. Wayne Huxford back into 4th place. Almost 5th now as they get through the sweep up.
Yeah, Rob Mossman taking a big risk going out on the marbles outside Wayne Huxford there. He'll get a bit of a fright in a second. Trevor Crowe, marvellous start in his little Starlet. Power-to-weight ratio better than that of the big car. Showed it in the start.
An excellent start for Trevor Crowe from Christchurch.
Ian Algey in 2nd place in his Alfetta. 3rd is Avon Hyde on his red Commodore. And 4th in the black car is the Bay Park specialist from Wellington, Wayne Huxford. Don Gridley getting up there behind Wayne Huxford in his yellow RX-7 as well. Going very well considering the turbocharger isn't on.
It's a very short race, it's 6 laps. So not much space to do anything about it if you lose a place. Trevor Crowe still leading. Ian Algey behind him, Avon Hyde, then Wayne Huxford, then Don Grindley.
Then Graham Addison, his Charger, ahead of Ralph Mossman.
Graham Addison just holding up 1 or 2 there. It's a very wide car to pass that Charger with the Formula 5000 back end. No Charger mechanicals in it at all.
Trevor Crowe getting a comfortable lead within 1 lap of this race. Pulling away from Ian Algey. It looks like the challenge is going to come from Ian Algey and not from Wayne Huxford as we thought.
I think there might be just a little bit of psych in here. 2 days ago, Trevor Crowe was up here and the car was running around very badly, misfiring at the top end of the rev range. They've changed the electricals on it and managed to get their horsepower back. But I know a lot of people around the pits were saying Trevor Crowe will be off the pace because the car's not running well.
Yes, yesterday in practice as well, Trevor Crowe was in changing spark plugs and all sorts of other electrical things with the distributor, and he had problems and the car wasn't running that well in practice. So a bit like Pukekohe, where we didn't expect Trevor Crowe didn't qualify too well. He won the first race in the dry. He's doing the same thing down here. Hasn't qualified the fastest, and he's out and away and leading the dry race.
Trevor Crowe still leading. 2nd place Ian Algey.
We must mention that Ian Algey at the Grand Prix meeting 2 weeks ago in the Wayne and the rain absolutely got away with the race. So he's an excellent driver and proved that he can drive well in the dry and the wet, and surprised most people at the Grand Prix 2 weeks ago.
That's Trevor Crowe leading the race. Ian Algie second. In third place, Avon Hyde, and the first time he's driven at Bay Park. He came into the pits yesterday and was talking to Trevor Crowe and one or two others and said, which way does this course go? I'll have to follow somebody in practice to figure out how it does. And he turns up with the third fastest qualifying time at 60-10.
And he's running in third place now ahead of the 5-litre Capri of Wayne Huxford, a Bay Park specialist. So this is a bit of a surprise to see Avon Hyde doing so well ahead of Wayne Huxford.
Huxford now challenging Avon Hyde, really breathing down his tailpipe, looking for a place to get past. There aren't many places you can pass in a big car like this at Bay Park, a very tight circuit. That Commodore is a Chev 350 motor rather than the ordinary Commodore 308 motor. Wayne Huxford with a 5-litre Capri behind him, pushing all away now, but can he find a way past Avon Hyde?
Well, Wayne Huxford will have a better handling car, but unfortunately on the straights, his 5-litre engine hasn't got enough power, and he has to drop him behind, and I think this is what's holding Wayne up. He's closing in under braking and under cornering. We'll see them at the end of this straight. He will close in under braking. In the corner, he should be able to close in coming out of the corner, but the 6-litre car just pulls away on the straight, and Wayne can't get past Avon Hyde and can't get through to the front and get Trevor Crowe.
Well, Avon Hyde might be a middle-aged gentleman, but he certainly doesn't drive like that.
No,
Wayne Huxford chasing him all the way here.
Avon Hyde in the South Island Oscar racing is a force to be reckoned with, that wins many races and invariably beats Trevor Crowe.
And Trevor Crowe still with that lead, starting to pull away just a little now from Ian Algie in second place. Avon Hyde still third, Wayne Huxford fourth.
In Oscar, they say that you can't run a 5-litre car and be competitive. You've got to run a 6-litre engine to have the power on the straights, and this is what's holding Wayne Huxford up, as you see him closing right up behind Avon Hyde through the sweeper at Bay Park. Once again, not being able to pull away on the straight.
Avon Hyde is going to be a very hard man for Wayne Huxford to get past. Wayne Huxford, as we told you, with a 57-10 lap, 2 seconds clear advantage over the next fastest qualifier, Trevor Crowe. He come the race, Trevor Crowe got a beautiful start, moved over the inside of the circuit and just ran away from them.
Yes, he's got a very good power to weight ratio, having a 4.1-litre engine and a very light motor car, and there's a very close call there for Trevor Crowe as he passed 2 cars that were having problems.
Not normally a man who has any trouble getting through the traffic, Trevor Crowe, and he has something of an advantage in the size and width of this car. Behind him, the Alfetta is wider, and behind him, the Commodore of Avon Hyde is wider again.
Yes, it'll be very difficult for these drivers getting through these slower cars. They're much slower, they hold them up in the corners, and there is even a lot of difference in the braking. Back with the race leader, Trevor Crowe, pulling out an enormous gap on Ian Algie in the traffic. His experience in motor racing is showing now. Ian Algie has only raced his big car for 3 years. He hasn't got the experience of Trevor Crowe.
On the final lap now, Trevor Crowe, the Christchurch car dealer, in the lead in the Little Starlet, the Oldsmobile V8, 4.2 litres, driven beautifully. Looks like a difficult car to drive. It looks like the wheelbase being that short would make it very twitchy, but on a circuit like this, it just handles beautifully.
Yes, with the wheelbase extended, as we said before, it's not as twitchy as you'd expect, Tony.
Coming down now to checkered flag. Ian Algie caught up just a little on the last lap. Trevor Crowe trying to get a little bit of blue smoke, but nothing major. Trevor Crowe wins. Ian Algie second. Avon Hyde third. Wayne Huxford fourth.
Yes, Wayne Huxford slowed right down there. He maybe had a problem in his car that we didn't know about. Fifth was Don Gridley from the South Islanders' yellow RX-7.
Yes, Don Gridley down a little bit on horsepower without the turbocharger, but certainly with the reliability to finish a race. Last year here at Bay Park, he came along with a lot of turbocharged boost, and it went very, very fast and sideways for a couple of laps in practice, and then it flew. And at Wigram, he had the misfortune to have it all set up beautifully, qualified in a very quick time, and then on the starting grid, a little 50-cent rubber seal gave way, and that was the end of his race. Never even got off the start line. But Trevor Crowe, an excellent race. Ian Algie, the Alfetta, right behind him, beautifully driven. And Avon Hyde, the surprise of the field in many ways, who had never driven at Bay Park before, has found his way around very, very quickly, and obviously will get more competitive as the day goes on.
Yes, and it goes South Islander, North Islander, South Islander, North Islander. So the South Islanders have come out on top this time.
As we said earlier, always a big grudge match between the North and the South Islanders. Trevor Crowe holding the South Islands flag very high indeed, with Avon Hyde backing him up beautifully in third place. Ian Algie has the North Islands.
And notice a lot of smoke coming out of Trevor Crowe's car there, so in the second Sport Sedan race, Trevor might have a problem. And I'll be very interested to go down to pits and talk to Wayne Huxford and see if he had a problem in the race, because he's dropped right back even on the slow down lap.
Yeah, I must have another word, Reg, with Trevor Crowe. Talking to him yesterday, he said it does smoke just a little on the overrun, but nothing major. It looked to me as though there was a little more there than we've seen in the past. We hope it's not on the downhill slide of a disintegrating engine. That is the result of the Sports Sedan Series over 6 laps. The race winner, Trevor Crowe, in the Starlet V8. Ian Algie in the Alfetta with the V8, alloy blocked V8 in it. Avon Hyde in the Commodore 350 Chev is third. So South Island is first and third, and the North Island in second place. We'll be back a little later in the afternoon with some more motor racing. Welcome back to Bay Park, where the track is in excellent condition for the first of the Formula Pacific heats, 2 of which have been run today to wind up the series. Now, after the schmozzle at the Grand Prix, where the rain really put paid to anybody's expectations of working out who was a likely winner, and Davy Jones, who's won 4 of the 6 races, now ends up in third place in the overall points championship because he's had 2 DNFs. So Jeff McPherson, the American, is in first place now with 42 points. Ken Smith has 40, Davy Jones 38, Ross Cheever 36, and Steve Cameron with 21 points. Let's meet the leading competitors in just a moment for the first Formula Pacific heat. As we said, those points have really stuck everybody's calculations all up the buoy, and Jeff McPherson now comes out as the leader with 42 points, narrowly leading from New Zealand's Ken Smith. Okay, let's go anyway and meet the drivers in the field for today's Pacific races. Top qualifier, Ross Cheever from the United States in the RT4. Number 2, Ross Cheever, part of the John Brandon team. Second fastest qualifier is Brett Riley from New Zealand in another RT4. Number 6, Brett Riley. In third place, Jeff McPherson, the series points leader. Davy Jones, the other half of the John Brandon team, has qualified 4th on the grid in another RT4. In 5th place, New Zealand's Ken Smith, the best hope New Zealand has for winning the series. Ken Smith is 3rd. 6th qualifier is Charlie O'Brien from Australia in another RT4. In 7th, Dave McMillan from New Zealand, car number 41, another Rolt RT4. The 8th qualifier is John Crawford, a newcomer to Pacific Racing, straight out of Formula 4. That's an RT1, car number 8. 9th qualifier, Riley Hopkins from the United States, car number 19, a Rolt RT4. The 10th qualifier is the United States Yachty Tom Blackhauler, a Rolt RT4, car number 5. 11th qualifier is Peter Haskett in a Chevron, car number 54. And at the back of the field, qualifying for her first Pacific race, the only woman in the race, Heather Spurl in the Chevron, car number 12. That is the lineup for the first Formula Pacific race. And I think that before we go any further, we should perhaps have a word with the man who is leading this championship at the moment, a most unexpected championship leader in the face of a lot of opposition from the hotshot youngsters from America, Jeff McPherson. We spoke to him a little earlier on. Jeff, you're really a desert racer. That's your background, and more recently you've come to circuit racing. You have an affiliation, I understand, with the Millen brothers.
Well, I met Steve. I've known Rod off and on for a while. Met Steve over in the United States when I first got involved in Formula Atlantic, and he helped me to sort of break the ice and get into this whole sport. But most recently I've come over here with Alan McCall, another Kiwi as well, and well, it's been really good.
What you're accustomed to, what you grew up with, was a wide-tail style of sliding driving. How hard has it been to convert to circuits where you really need to drive straight lines?
You have to be, it's possibly, well, it's definitely more challenging to do this sort of racing from a point of view of accuracy and precision. But in the desert racing, it has its own challenges. Possibly a race may be anywhere from 8 to 15 hours long, and that's driving by yourself, usually. So there's sort of a trade-off. They're both tough in their own way, this being more of a sprint situation, but requiring real accuracy.
Well, we've been through the qualifying order for you, and it's quite interesting that Ross Cheever, number 2, moving up onto the grid proper now, was under the lap record. Of course, you can only set a lap record in a race, so we'll see if he can do that in the race. It is Roberto Moreno's lap record that he has gone under, 53.47. And the lap record held by Roberto Moreno is 53.8, which is an average in miles an hour of 90.45. To give you some indication of the average speed around here, 90.45 miles an hour. That is the grid and the order. And very, very heartening to know that Heather Spurl has managed to qualify on the back of the grid. Is Ross Cheever on the front. Behind him is Brett Riley. Then Jeff McPherson. The flag up now, they're away in the first Formula Pacific heat of the day. McPherson, the points leader. Behind him is Smith and Jones behind him. It's going to count a lot who can get into that first corner and out of the first sweeper first.
Okay, we've got Ross Cheever out in the lead from our New Zealander, Brett Riley. Brett was hoping to grab the lead. I know that was his big chance to be able to lead round that first lap, but let's watch this first lap with interest. We know that we've got 2 young men anxious to win. There's a little luck up from Brett Riley in the Duralux car. But watch more especially for young Ross Cheever, the one that's copped a lot of criticism for crashing. He's leading this race very, very well from his pole. Jeff McPherson 3rd, Davy Jones back in 4th place. 5th, our own Ken Smith, and Dave McMillan in the Moore route in 6th.
Interesting looking at Dave McMillan back there in the field in the Moore car. This morning they went out and practiced on a very slippery track, slid off and damaged the front of it. They've done an amazing job to repair it this quickly with some spare bits, and they're back out and racing. That's an indication of how quickly the pit crew has worked under the guidance of Gary Pedersen.
Try and help you to identify these cars. Ross Cheever in the black route number 2 there has a dark blue helmet. White helmet there is Brett Riley. He's number 6. Very hard to distinguish between that car and our 4th place, Davy Jones. But there's Jeff McPherson, series leader in 3rd place on your screen, and Davy Jones now. Now Davy's got a real job on his hands. He knows that he's been the man to beat in all the races up till now. As Tony said, 4 races out of 6 starts, and he's not even leading the series. He wonders what he must do. But very, very fast. We can't underestimate him. But Ross Cheever really is the confident young man. He's had that Grand Prix win last week, and that's done a heck of a lot to improve his confidence, and he knows that if he wins this race and Ken Smith is lower than 2nd place, he will win the series.
So Jeff McPherson's object most of the day is going to be to keep Davy Jones behind him. That's number 70, Jeff McPherson needs to keep number 1, Davy Jones, behind him.
At this point, Ross will be quite happy that he's now had this lead for a couple of laps, and it's not a closing gap. Brett's pressuring him, but he's not exactly climbing all over him. So he'll be now feeling himself into the race, picking his lines, approaching the corners to his own liking rather than driving in defensively. Nice wide line, fast exit. But where Ross Cheever has really shone in practice is on turn 1. That is now, we're going through turn 4 onto the pit straight. But as we go down the pit straight for the third lap. Ross Cheever yesterday through the sweeping turn that we're approaching now, turn 1, was visibly faster, pulling away, and you can see on your screen now, just inching away from Brett Riley. He's in 4th gear at about 9,000 RPM as he comes out of that sweeping turn. Very, very fast man. He's set his car up entirely for that fast corner.
It's really lovely to see Brett Riley, New Zealand's Brett Riley, out there in the CRC Duralux car. After the problems that they had at Pukekohe, you will have all seen them crash. They have spent many, many hours working till early hours of the morning repairing this car. Brett Riley came out and practiced and straight away went very, very quickly. The car is going very, very well. Here's the series leader, Jeff McPherson from America. The man who got his start in Formula Pacific type racing, Formula Atlantic racing in the United States, through his association with the Millen brothers. You'll know Rodney and Steve Millen. Rodney, the rally driver, Steve, the circuit driver, now live in the United States, and they met Jeff McPherson as a dirt track racer in the desert and thought that he had a lot of talent, and between them they've got him onto the track, and he now leads this series on points.
Of course, Davy Jones, as I said earlier, has got a lot of pressure on him at this point, because Davy Jones, Ross Cheever are both American young men, 20 years of age. Both have an anxious, burning desire to get into Formula 1, or at least to get up the racing ladder. And obviously who wins of the two of them in this series is going to be regarded as the best choice. But Davy in 4th has had a bad weekend. He blew his practice in the sense that he used his tyres at the wrong point of practice and therefore didn't get to the qualifying time he wanted. He for once was beaten for pole, which is the first position on the grid, and this is the first time in the series that I can remember that he hasn't had a pole position. So mentally, Davy Jones is up against it, weaving a little bit as he came out of that turn 4 on the pit straight then. But we'll watch this battle with interest, the one where Davy Jones tries to get onto the back of Jeff McPherson and wear him down.
I noticed too that Kenny Smith is pressuring Davy Jones on some parts of the circuit, but can't get close to him on others.
Well, as I said, Tony, drivers have various choices, and one of the ideas is to set your car up for the 3 slower turns. Like this is the first of the 3 slow turns, as we call them. Now, it is possible that you can get a small advantage on those slow turns, but you destroy the car for the big fast sweeper. And I personally believe Cheever has made the right choice. He's set his car up for the fast bend, and it certainly showed through in practice. And so far, it's showing through in the race.
After 6 laps of the 38 in this first heat, as will be the case in the second, the race order is Ross Cheever in front, New Zealand's Brett Riley behind him, American Jeff McPherson, the series leader, then Davy Jones, then Ken Smith.
It should be noted that the previous winner last year was Paul Radisich, and he set his car up for the sweeper as well and won 2 races in a row at the beginning of the series. And while we're talking about Paul Radisich, it's a shame that another talented New Zealander is not actually out here racing, because he performed with great credit last year and also did reasonably well in the Formula 3 races he did in England, but hasn't been able to capitalise and get out here against these guys today.
And these are 2 of the people that he has competition with, the young Americans, Ross Cheever and Davy Jones in Formula 3.
Car in your screen, the Ralph there, number 2. Since Pukekohe, since it won the New Zealand Grand Prix, it's been completely pulled apart. All those black panels have been removed and a new chassis installed. That's called the monocoque. Team manager Graham Watson believes that the car had been suffering a fair amount of underneath damage in its trips across curbs and various off-course excursions. And whilst he didn't really believe it was a structural fault, it's good for the driver's morale and good for the team if the car is spick and span new parts. So that car virtually rebuilt as a brand new car for this race.
Yes, it's interesting they said that the car probably wouldn't go any better because it had a new monocoque, but in actual fact, when you look at Ross Cheever's performance this weekend, maybe there is something in changing monocoque, David.
Well, certainly a stiff chassis is the dream of every driver or mechanic, because it doesn't allow any movement of components, mounting brackets and the like, and a mechanic can adjust, as can the driver with his internal adjustments. You can adjust the car far more quickly and positively if the car or the chassis is not flexing and twisting. But certainly, as Reg just pointed out, that car is working beautifully, comes off the turns fast. But Brett's not giving him any inch, so we've still got a good race in our hands.
Yes, Ross Cheever's got a problem here because he's in the lead. He wants to win the race. He wants to win the series, and he can't afford to make a mistake. And he has Brett Riley only a fraction of a second behind him, not making any mistakes. So Ross can't afford to go over any curves. He can't afford to get any punches. He just can't afford to do anything wrong at all. And even though there's 100 yards between those cars, the time distance is very little, and it's only one lock up, one small spin, and the lead would change. And it would be a very humiliating experience for Ross Cheever to throw the lead away now.
Ross Cheever still leading from New Zealand's Brett Riley. In third place, Jeff McPherson. Fourth place, Davy Jones, and then Ken Smith. Looking at the gaps between them, Ross Cheever has really pulled out nothing from Brett Riley. Brett Riley really keeping him honest. If anything, the gap back to Jeff McPherson in third is open just a little. And Davy Jones really needs to get in front of Jeff McPherson. That's the race at the moment between Jeff McPherson and Davy Jones.
Look, Jeff McPherson has been a bit of a find in this series here, leading it. Hasn't made any mistakes. With consistency, has got this lead. And I'm sure that he's a man that Davy Jones isn't going to be able to pass easy. He isn't going to make mistakes. And even though Davy Jones pressurised him, I can't see Jeff McPherson letting him be flustered.
Good to see Ken Smith hanging on to the back of Davy Jones there. As we told you earlier, he blew an engine in practice and had to change it overnight. He didn't think that it would be quite as good, although he was quite happy to be optimistic about the result.
Looking for a passing move up this straight area, possibly this lap or more likely the next lap. Davy will know that the inside into that corner is probably one of the most likely places where he's going to have an advantage, because it would appear that he gets into and through turn 2, the end of the long back straight. The drivers are trying hard not to give away time. Now, what Jeff McPherson did clearly lost him ground there, going sideways. The old rule, if you're going sideways, you're not going forwards. And look, now Davy's climbing all over him, looking for a gap, but he's had to drop back into line. Lost the momentum now, and now all he can do is hope to get back up into some kind of slipstream, but he had to lift off at the critical point just at the exiting of the turn 1 sweeper.
Yes, Jeff McPherson won't do that again. He went into the big sweeper just a bit too fast, slid out, nearly let Davy Jones through.
Davy going very wide there. That's a temptation to go into a very late braking manoeuvre and lose ground. So Davy's getting a little bit rattled now.
Yes. Ken Smith catching up ground on Davy Jones through that little manoeuvre. Ken Smith hanging on nicely to the back of Davy Jones now. That order really closing up very quickly. On the back of the field being lapped there is Heather Spurl in the Chevron B34. She was inside the qualifying time. There was a lot of opposition around the pitch yesterday about whether or not she could start. The 110% rule was applied, where she must qualify in 110% of the time of the fastest, or the pole qualifier, which in this case was Ross Cheever. She did it yesterday afternoon, and she did 5 laps consistently under that time, and therefore justified a start. Very good to see her in the race.
Tony, always a good supporter of women's liberation, yes?
Jeff McPherson
well,
having a lot of trouble.
Battle here. Reg, just interrupting there. If you notice through the sweeper, Jeff McPherson clearly now is holding Davy Jones up, and then through the middle to the exit turn, part of the turn, obviously McPherson's car not quite as well set up as the John Brandon car for Davy Jones. Now, this will be frustrating to Jones. He knows that in this little ragged section here, he hasn't got much chance of passing, but he'll be looking for a slight error going wide by McPherson maybe. He'll try and make a hole going into the sweeper, because he certainly closes up on him going around this number 1, turn 1 sweeper.
That is the race for 3rd, 4th and 5th positions. It hasn't changed in the front. Ross Cheever still leading, and Ross Cheever starting to drive very, very well. Very, very consistent lap times. He's doing it nicely. He's coming out wide on the exit corners, doing it nice and comfortably. And Brett Riley from New Zealand is hanging on to him and hasn't lost anything by comparison.
It's a marvellous drive from Brett Riley, who hasn't been in all the other races in the series, had a problem with Pukekohe and got knocked out, and to come back and be racing so well in a car that's had so much work done on 2 weeks, it's a credit to Brett Riley.
So after 13 of the 38 laps, that's the race order. Ross Cheever, Brett Riley, Jeff McPherson. We'll be back with the rest of the race very shortly. Meantime, Formula Pacific final day. Ross Cheever still leads the race on lap 15. From New Zealand's Brett Riley in 2nd place, American Jeff McPherson in 3rd place, then Davy Jones 4th and Ken Smith 5th. That's 2nd place Brett Riley. There's Jeff McPherson, there's Davy Jones and Ken Smith behind him. And in the last couple of laps we've noticed while you were away that Jeff McPherson on the exit, this corner where you've seen Ross Cheever just come through. Looking at it now, Jeff McPherson comes out of there very, very wide indeed, and Davy Jones really picking up ground on him at the exit to that corner.
Also, the next corner, Jeff McPherson doesn't turn in very well, and Davy Jones is able to close right up. And a few laps earlier, we nearly saw Jeff McPherson get past there, but I think in his car they have an adjustable sway bar, and he's probably dialing the understeer and oversteer out of his car, and maybe David could reinforce whether or not he's got adjustable sway bars in his car.
Looking at the start of the race, we were critical in the past a little of Ross Cheever's ability to stay on the track. I noticed yesterday that he went out and tried all sorts of different wing settings, and at one stage he tried it with no wing at all and said to me with a bit of a chuckle he wanted to know what it would be like if it rained.
Well, we've all had a fair lash of driving around Bay Park, and to put it bluntly, it's a pig of a circuit. It's very unrewarding as far as you can make adjustments which you think are going to benefit it. You go out and you even think it's faster, and McPherson is off. Spun out on turn 4. Jeff McPherson, our series leader, he will be furious now, doing a big wheelie as he takes off back up the track, but that's certainly done his championship chances no good at all.
Well, Kenny Smith will be looking fairly good for the championship now. He'll be holding a points lead.
Well, we now have Davy Jones through into a position where he can really aim at challenging Brett Riley without the interference of a car in front. Now watch this in replay. Backwards, parked nicely and stopped.
The last 3 laps, David, he had got very, very wide and very tail happy, and we know he's a desert dirt road racer, but it wasn't only a matter of time before he went round.
Yes, I think he had to just put the power down a bit early, got a power overslide on, thought he could control it, but wasn't able to because it isn't a rally car, it's a race car, and around he went.
It's interesting to note the line that Ross Cheever used at that last turn there, turn 4. It's reminiscent of watching both Steve Millen and Roberto Moreno. A very high entry, as we call it, and that means going to the outside of the turn and using the part of the track that no one else uses. And they get, if there's no rubber, dust or particles out there, you get better grip, and certainly Ross Cheever's using it to that effect.
That's the order after lap 18. Ross Cheever of America, 2nd place Brett Riley of New Zealand, and 3rd place Davy Jones. Davy Jones is the man who really, I guess everybody would have to say, deserves to win the series, having won 4 of 6 races, but because of the Grand Prix and 2 races where he didn't finish, he goes back and ends up in 3rd place behind Ken Smith in the championship. McPherson with 42 points, Smith with 40, and Jones with 38. So Davy Jones really needs to be closer to the front to do his chances any good today. Ken Smith not losing anything on Davy Jones at all.
Well, obviously off the screen at the moment are the places behind Ken Smith, but it would appear to us at the last sighting we had behind Ken Smith, we had Charlie O'Brien, Dave McMillan and Riley Hopkins from the USA. If
the race stays as it is, the points would still leave Jeff McPherson in the lead with 44, and Kenny Smith with 43, Davy Jones with 42, I tell lies, Ross Cheever would be in the lead with 45, so you have 4 drivers within 4 points in the championship as they're running on the road today, with Ross Cheever in the lead in points.
I don't know when we've ever had a closer Formula Pacific Championship in terms of points, and it looks like it will come down to the last race of the day to decide who is the winner overall.
Let's watch this line now of Ross Cheever. Not quite so high up that time, but a nice smooth exit, and probably of the drivers that you're watching, he is the smoothest on the exiting of the corner. The car doesn't get quite the sideways motion that both Brett Riley and Davy Jones will be getting.
In between Ross Cheever and Brett Riley, that is in between 1st and 2nd place, Peter Haskett in the old Chevron B34. But we think that it will take only a little while. Brett Riley is past now, so still 1st place Ross Cheever from the United States, Brett Riley from New Zealand 2nd, and 3rd place Davy Jones.
Peter Haskett in this car set reasonably good time in practice and drove brilliantly well 2 weeks ago at the Grand Prix in the rain. And while it's an old car, is a better driver than most people think he is, and maybe in a better car would be fairly close to the front as well.
Davy Jones just getting past Peter Haskett.
Peter making it nice and tight, certainly not giving him too much room.
Peter is a hard charger, and he's never let anyone pass easily, and has been in front of the stewards many times for sort of aggressive driving. Kenny Smith now has the problem of getting past Peter Haskett.
Ken Smith past Peter Haskett, so all of the front of the field now past the back markers, Heather Spurl and Peter Haskett.
There was some controversy on race morning. This morning, Brett Riley's grid position was in question by the team of Cheever and Jones. They didn't believe in the fact that he'd done the time, and it was rather unfortunate that we have a car slowing. That looks like Tom. It looks like an older car because it's got the cross wing on it, Reg. either the chevron of Peter Haskett, in fact, yes. So unfortunately we've lost Peter Haskett from the race. But this controversy we had was probably a bit ill-founded. I mean, Brett Riley is a fast driver, and the Eric Morgan team running the CRC Duralux car are a good little team. They prepared the car well after the accident, and rather unfortunate that the Royal Australian team saw fit to dispute the time of Brett Riley.
Well, Brett Riley's being adamant yesterday about that time, the second quickest, is well borne out by the way the race has run so far. Brett Riley has not moved too far back on Ross Cheever at all, managed to keep him in sight. There's Ross Cheever at the head of the race, looking back now for the gap to second place. There's Brett Riley, and he's lost very little in the last 5 laps. We thought for a while that Ross Cheever might be able to comfortably pull away from Brett Riley once the race got underway. That hasn't been the case. Brett Riley is staying there, and Ross Cheever doing it very, very smoothly and certainly unchallenged, but Brett Riley hanging on to him and losing nothing.
Yesterday I went into the timekeeper's hut because someone said there was a controversy on times, and all these Pacific drivers had 2 timekeepers on them yesterday so that they could be double-checked. And the times were double-checked with both timekeepers on Brett Riley. The time was found to be correct, and that's the end of the topic. Everybody has to accept the times that the timekeepers come up with, and any form of controversy really is a form of...
That's Ross Cheever getting past Tom Blackaller now. The next man to be lapped. Tom Blackaller in an RT4, which should be competitive in a straight line with Ross Cheever. Ross Cheever getting past him up to turn 2.
It's unfortunate we haven't got Tom Blackall's Kiwi teammate Steve Cameron here, who had the sister car, the Blue Relt RT4. It was damaged extensively in that Pukekohe accident on just after the start finish, and unfortunately Steve and the boys just weren't able to put the car together. No funds, and unfortunately couldn't make it.
Needless to say, Steve Cameron is still involved. He's working on Tom Blackaller's team, and yesterday he was out there with spanners in his hand, so good to see the team spirit.
Yesterday they had to change an engine in Tom Blackaller's car too between the practice sessions, and Steve having to work very hard doing that.
Ross Cheever still holding on to that race lead from Brett Riley, and third place Davy Jones still.
It appears on our screen, because we haven't got, we aren't able from the commentary box to put watches on it, but it would appear on our screen that Brett is closing slightly on Ross Cheever. So we'll try and watch this gap, and maybe our cameraman will come up with some times as well.
Davy Jones also getting a clean run now. Is not losing any ground to Brett Riley, and wouldn't be surprised if he's closing in as well. So as this race progresses, we've got the front 3 cars closing in on each other, and we could end up with a even closer dice than we've got now. Brett Riley definitely closing in, and so is Davy Jones.
Now, if that in fact is a case of the second and third men closing on Ross Cheever, we might be looking for something like a flat tyre or a deflating tyre on Ross Cheever, because I'm sure he's not the sort of person that goes slow or wants to slow down.
Very, very consistent lap times in official practice for Ross Cheever. He has been the happiest we've seen him since the series started, Ross Cheever. He's been running around the pits with a smile from ear to ear. Absolutely ecstatic to be in front of Davy Jones, who really has dominated him a little since they came here, and absolutely ecstatic to be the pole qualifier. The winner of the New Zealand Grand Prix, hardly the basis for a lot of skiting and the basis of this year's New Zealand Grand Prix and the way it was run, but I think that Ross Cheever has proved the point this weekend. He has come out and been consistently quick. It would be enormously bad luck if he has a problem with the car now and Brett Riley and Davy Jones can catch him.
Ross Cheever is the brother of Eddie Cheever, who's an established driver in Formula 1, and to win this race today he'd feel that he's able to emulate his brother, and that's what he wants to do.
Just looking at pictures alone, it would appear that Davy Jones is the fastest travelling man of the 3 cars on our screen, because he's pulled back an enormous deficit that he had when he was chasing McPherson. So there's the 4 cars in the first 4 places, I believe. That's Ken Smith and back and forth. So that's Ross Cheever, Brett Riley in car number 6, Davy Jones, the last car in your picture, in fact. And there's Ken Smith going through, dropping off the pace now, Kenny. He's lost the momentum to stick with him, so the race is clearly up front. And lapping the slower cars, that involves a little bit of forethought. You don't want to waste an opportunity of passing, but by the same token, that we've got Ross Cheever's through from Peter Haskett, Now Brett Riley has to have a go, but look at Davy Jones really closing now on Brett Riley. We're going to have a race here.
Ken Smith through, still in 4th place.
Davy Jones' experience in Formula 3 and other forms of motor racing last year would make him a very, very fit driver, and I think this is going to help him at the end of this race. His aggressiveness and fitness is definitely paying off now. Brett Riley hasn't had the chance to race as much as Davy Jones during the year, and while he may be quicker, he hasn't got the race fitness.
Peter Haskett making that a clean road for Davy Jones to go through. Certainly he can't afford to get tied up with some slower traffic, but Peter Haskett no trouble at all there, left a wide road for Jones. Off your screen at the moment is John Crawford, young South Islander who's been in the Formula Ford series, in fact won the Formula Ford this year. He's in a red Relt, and if we later on in the film can catch a picture of the Relt of John Crawford, he's having his first Pacific race. In fact, that's Heather Spurl in the old Chevron, but she's having her first race, as Tony pointed out. And we think that Crawford's in behind. No, in fact, it's Dave McMillan. So Dave obviously coming up to lap. Charlie O'Brien in car number 3, the yellow car on the screen at that point. Now here's Heather. She's probably giving a bit of room to these men who are barging their way through, but she's just dead proud to be out there. She's had a burning ambition to be in Formula Pacific and show that she's not scared of the power that the Formula Pacific can be, and a damn good job she's done. But there she's waving to the traffic. Now that's going to be appreciated by the guys. They know that she knows where they are, and that really is important when you're driving with slower traffic.
And they've certainly given her a hard time in the last few days about being expected to be a mobile chicane. Yeah, the Spurl has done very well to qualify and has given everybody enough room to get past. She has balked nobody that we've seen so far. A good drive.
And here we have John Crawford, the man David Oxon was talking about before we were in the Rolt RT1, which he has leased or done a deal with Dave McMillan.
Davy Jones getting very, very close now to Brett Riley. That gap certainly has closed, and we suspect it's Davy Jones who is the quickest man on the circuit at the moment. Ross Cheever, the gap between Ross Cheever and Brett Riley opening up just a little, but it's Davy Jones challenging Brett Riley for 2nd place.
There's something in teams here. Jeff McPherson and both Brett Riley having problem turning into corners, and these John Brandon cars of Ross Cheever and Davy Jones all point into corners exceptionally well, and this is something to do with being part of a works team, I think.
Here's the battle now for 2nd place between Davy Jones and Brett Riley. Davy Jones having a go this time round to get to 2nd place.
That was a tremendous bit of approach or overtaking manoeuvre. He lined that corner up as he went into the lined Brett Riley up as he went into the corner, got the faster exit down the inside, and now he is pulling away. So Brett probably wonders how that all happened. He was holding a good 2nd place a lap ago, and now he's dropped quite considerably back from Jones. So here we go on the replay, lining him up on the outside. Now Davy drops down into the inside to get the outside line approach. Now that just allows him to position himself, crowd Brett down. Now he goes up high, drops down at the apex and blasts up the inside. Very good bit of driving by Davy Jones.
Yes, Davy Jones' car definitely being able to point in properly, go in very deep and get a very fast exit, and these John Brandon cars, it's what they're doing better than the others.
Well, now of course the question is, can Davy Jones do anything about his teammate Ross Cheever? Ross is allowed to have got quite a shoulder there. He's eased away, probably got 3 seconds margin there, I would say, and it's going to be a battle. It'll be a test of young Davy Jones now to see what he does about this gap, whether he closes it, maintains it, or what.
On the last 2 laps, Davy Jones has been gaining half a second on Ross Cheever in 1st place. So certainly he's the quickest man on the circuit. Ross Cheever will get signals from his pits very shortly to let him know that Davy Jones is coming, certainly approaching him. Ross Cheever has a good buffer at the moment, but he really is. It's going to be a test of his maturity to see how well he can stay there and keep consistent lap times, while Davy Jones behind him is making ground. Well, lapping very, very consistent.
Davy Jones is a more experienced driver in the last year, and he's been around New Zealand before. He's won races here. He has maturity here, so he's got a good chance of closing in and having the experience to get past Ross Cheever.
Well, we aren't aware of the lap times. They quite often can look very fast, but remembering the lap record is held here by Roberto Moreno at 53.8 seconds. Qualifying yesterday Russ Cheever went way under that time with a 53.47, but as we told you before, that is not official until it's done in the race. The time has to be recorded in the race. But looking at the pace of Cheever easing away, he would be probably in the low 54-second category, I would think.
And Jeff McPherson, after that spin in your picture now, has only lost a couple of places. He's back to 5th.
He is right behind Ken Smith, who is in 4th place.
So he's recovered very, very well after the spin. It was obvious from the way the car was handling that he wasn't going to be able to keep out Davy Jones for very long. And he overdid it just a little, coming into the front straight and had a big spin. And he's lost a couple of places as a result. So back to 5th place now for the series leader, Jeff McPherson from the United States, the ex-dirt track racer. But still the lead held by Ross Cheever, number 2, in the John Brandon team, driving superbly, and still with a gap from him back to Davy Jones, his teammate, in 2nd place.
The point situation in this championship now are very, very interesting, with Ross Cheever would have 45, Davy Jones 44, Jeff McPherson 44, and Kenny Smith 43. So we've 4 drivers now within 2 points at this race finishes like this with a race to go. People said putting the International Series in December wouldn't work, but we've got an International Series which is about to finish today, and nobody knows who the winner is going to be, and that is excellent.
Well, Heather Spurl really mixed up with the big boys now. She'll be getting a first-hand knowledge of how to dive into turn 1 fast, American style. There's Ross Cheever, beautiful exit, and now Davy Jones, not quite as tidy on that fast exit. But certainly he knows he's got 2nd place in the bag. He's got 2 points advantage on Ross Cheever, and well, we hope that both of them remember that to finish first we must finish. And just a small mistake, a lock-up, is all that is needed by Ross Cheever to let Davy Jones come swamping all over him.
It'd be interesting to note here that all these cars at the front are Rolf RT4s, and there's a works team which is headed by an ex-Patrick Kiwi New Zealander, Graham Watson, and both his cars are in 1st and 2nd position at the moment. Last year, Graham Watson was racing here and was very close to an accident that happened with, and he probably got the blame for, but as we hear later on, that the manager of this team wasn't actually involved in the accident, as had been recorded earlier on television.
These 20-year-old superstars are the ones that are really lighting up the track, but let's not lose sight of Brett Riley. He's the one that's really giving them a hurry up. He deserves a good result. He's shown that he's capable of putting the car up there with the good ones, and he's handily placed there right behind Davy Jones should either of the Americans make that mistake.
Quite surprising, actually, when Davy Jones got past Brett Riley in your picture now, the Duralux car. When Davy Jones got past him, it looked as though he would run away, but in fact, Brett Riley has hung on beautifully.
Brett's car is probably just as quick. It just doesn't point into corners properly, and doesn't make the exit quite as well, and it's not that difficult to pass it. But if he had a car that handled the same as Davy Jones, I don't think he'd have got past.
We are in the dying stages of this race. 2 laps to go for our leaders, Cheever, Jones and Riley. Ken Smith bringing up 4th place, Jeff McPherson in 5th, and we think still Dave McMillan 6th and Charlie O'Brien in 7th. So we think this is the form that will help Ross Cheever on his quest to be champion. Of course, a first in this heat would do him very good, do his championship chances a lot of good, especially with McPherson back in 5th place. Now that sums up the place that certainly he doesn't want to be. I spoke to him yesterday and he said, well, he'd be quite happy to take up a 2nd place in the race or in either heat, and that would have kept his championship pretty well in the bag. But McPherson's up against it now, and this is the man most likely to benefit from it, Ross Cheever from the USA.
Just working out the point situation, if they finish in this position, would put Ross Cheever in the lead overall. Davy Jones probably in 2nd place. We'll have to work those out and get them official for you a little later on. 2 laps to go in the race. Ross Cheever from the United States, still leading from his teammate and compatriot, a man of the same age, just turned 20, Davy Jones. In 2nd place. In 3rd place is New Zealand's Brett Riley. by our calculations, they're coming up now for the last lap. So the next time round is the checkered flag for Ross Cheever. A weekend of hard work down here, 3 days of testing with Davy Jones and the John Brandon team. They've tried everything there was to try. They've tried every which way around the circuit and learned it very, very quickly. Neither has competed here before, so an excellent result to be 1-2 for the John Brandon team. Ross Cheever first, Davy Jones is in second place, and Brett Riley of New Zealand in third.
A brilliant drive from Brett Riley in a car that was used to be owned by Eric Morgan and that was smashed up badly at this meeting a year ago.
Here is our race leader, and perhaps our series leader at the end of the day, depending entirely on what Davy Jones does behind him. Jeff McPherson, remember, was the series leader when they came here with 42. Ken Smith with 40. There's the checkered flag for Ross Cheever. Davy Jones down in second place, so a 1-2 finish for the John Brandon team. Brett Riley in third place, Ken Smith fourth.
And Riley Hopkins, I think, up into 5th place. And that's a tremendous result from Riley Hopkins in the Grand car. We'll check this, of course. It could be that the pace of the to, in fact, lap Riley Hopkins.
Have to check that in a moment, but it doesn't really make a great deal of difference in the front of the field. Riley Hopkins not in with a chance in the points. The points battle is between Ross Cheever, Davy Jones, Ken Smith and Jeff McPherson. Very, very close between those four. Ross Cheever, the winner, by a nice margin. And David Oxton, I think, a very, very maturely driven race.
Certainly the best race that we've seen from Ross Cheever in the series. And he said earlier today, he really feels like he's come of age in this country. He arrived at Wigram, 3 laps on the circuit, crashed the car, and said, what a silly fool I was to do that. Today, he's winning races like a very polished professional, and I think that's going to do his confidence no end of good.
Ross Cheever, a deserved winner of the first heat, and the points, as we work them out very unofficially now, with a race to go today in the series, it looks like Ross Cheever has 56, Jones 53, Smith 50, and McPherson 50. So only 6 points separating the first four. Very, very tight position. Ross Cheever just being congratulated by Rothman's promotions manager Peter Wills down there. And we'll try and get a word down in the pits with Ross Cheever. Graham Booth is down there. We'll have a camera there in just a sec.
Well, Ross, you're leading the series now, won the race. Things have really come right for you here, haven't they?
Well, I haven't won the series yet. It's still a ways to go. There's still another race. It's a total of both races put together, but I mean, I'm in a good position at the moment.
Sure, but you're leading the series now. Surely that must be great.
Well, I'm not sure. I mean, if I don't finish the next one, then I'm not leading.
But surely you will.
Well, I'll do my best.
What was your technique there? Was it to get out in front and stay in front?
Yeah, I was trying to get avoiding, you know, first lap incidents, because I have been known to do that before, so I was trying to stay as calm as I could and then slowly pull away.
Could you see what was happening back of the field? Could you see Davy coming up behind you?
Well, the mirrors aren't that good on these cars. You can't see very much. They're quite small. But I could see on my lap board that I was, you know, how many seconds lead I had. That's all I was interested in.
Of course, there's a fair bit been done to your car since Pukekohe, a new monocoque and that sort of thing. It seems to have made a huge difference, Ross.
Yeah, well, the car's always been great. I mean, if it have been for all my accidents that I had initially, we would have been like this all the time. It was only, you know, my mistakes that I did. The car is really, really good, you know.
You certainly haven't made any mistakes that time. Now, are you going to make any predictions for the last race of the day?
No, I just know I'm going to give 110%, and I'm sure everybody else will, and hopefully we'll have a good race for the spectators.
Ross Cheever, the winner and the points leader, very briefly at this stage, with another race to come to wind up this international series. Ross Cheever, the winner, that is the result from the United States. Davy Jones, his teammate in a similar car from the United States, is second. And New Zealand's Brett Riley, the best of the New Zealanders in the RT4, in third place. So there are many permutations. We'll have to sit down with some calculators now, work out the points, and by the time you come back to us for the second race of the day, we will know exactly who has to do what to win this series overall. We're going back to the studio now. We'll be back a little later in the afternoon with some more sports.
Car number 7, as you can see him. Beside him is car number 13, Murray Starnes. and Murray Starnes, the series leader, it would be a bit surprising that he's not on pole. They're having a bit of a mix-up on the grid here. There was an argument in the pits about times, and the list as we have it may not be correct. As they're lining up properly now, Murray Starnes is on the outside of the grid on the left, as you can see the car. It's car number 13. He's raced in Mini 7s very successfully all around this country, and is a very quick driver, and in last year in Laser Sports was very inconsistent. And car number 7, as we said, as you see him in your picture now, is John Ranger. And the yellow car, as you can see on the left, car number 61 is Ed Lamont, who did very, very well in Laser Sports last year. And car number 1, Warren Hislop, won the championship last year, is 4th on the grid.
As we told you, the points situation relatively close compared to the other classes in the Laser Sports. And for viewers at home who don't know about the Laser Sport class of racing, it was initiated as a relatively cheap form of motorsport because the cars are totally unmodified. You must buy them off the showroom floor and race them exactly as they are. Obviously they change the brake fluid so that they don't boil fluid and the odd little safety things, but they are essentially production cars as they come out of the dealer's showroom floor. So that the cars are equivalent, and it comes down to driver ability. Flag down, they're away this time.
Murray Starnes getting an excellent start in front of John Ranger, Ed Lamont and Warren Hislop. These cars race very, very closely for the first few laps, and quite often you see them touching, but they have a point system now. If you hit another car, you lose your points for the meeting, so the racing has become a lot less spectacular and a lot cleaner with not as many cars with panel damage.
This form of sport originated with the Escort Sport, which is the predecessor to the Laser Sport. That was a rear drive vehicle, 1600 pushrod motor. These are transverse engine, 1.5 litre single overhead cam and front drive.
Yes, Murray Starnes locking up very badly there, and Warren Hislop capitalising, and Ed Lamont getting on the inside of Warren Hislop, probably touching. They'll have to be very careful, they'll lose points for this. Murray Starnes, brilliant driving, managed to keep his lead. Very closely packed field. Murray Starnes still in the lead under braking. Ed Lamont on the outside of him. Warren Hislop trying to get in there. John Ranger as well, very close.
Ed Lamont going very wide and losing 2 places on that corner, trying to get it up again, and he's off again.
Off, yes. Ed Lamont, he'll shove his way back on the middle of the next corner. Yes, there he goes, back on the field.
He appears to be doing more of his driving off the circuit than on, Reg, like a bit of a rally driver.
Yes.
But you budding Ross Cheevers, remember this is the formula to break into motorsport at a reasonable level. And in fact, Craig Coleman, one of the rising stars of New Zealand motorsport, in fact spent last season in a Laser Sport, and only recently, well, within the last 9 months, went to Formula Ford and has done very, very well. So a good birthplace for future drivers is Laser Sport.
Notice the drivers weaving down here. They get a big toe off each other, slipstreaming, and the cars follow each other very, very closely down the straight so they get the top speed. Murray Starnes being challenged for the lead by John Ranger, a surprise in this field. Warren Hislop there. John Ranger driving exceptionally well. Hasn't been up in the points or on pole position before, and challenging Murray Starnes, a very experienced person.
Absolutely nothing between these vehicles. No one of them has any more horsepower than the other. The idea is to keep the momentum up and to lose as little time as possible with scrubbed off speed going sideways, getting on the brakes at the right time, but essentially keeping the momentum of the vehicle up so that you keep your cornering speeds up.
Yes, John Ranger driving exceptionally well, not making mistakes. Very, very deep under brakes, can hold anyone out. Murray Starnes a bit more erratic. He's a bit like this when he was in a Mini 7, and consequently he loses his lead and then goes well and drops back a bit.
Ed Lamont in the yellow car back there in the field, back in 4th place at the moment, 5th place at the moment, despite a couple of offs and driving over the road. In any other form of motorsport, that would have put paid to your chances and you'd have lost a couple of 100 metres. In Laser Sports, you can get off onto the grass and come back on again on the circuit, as you've seen him do a couple of times, and losing very little.
Yes, these cars weaving down the straight here. This is technically illegal. They could get in trouble for it. You're supposed to hold your line and not weave over the circuit at will, but John Ranger, no fault, not going to give Murray Starnes a slipstreaming opportunity, and out brakes him into the corner cleanly.
Warren Hislop in 3rd place there, going very wide into the turn.
Tony Marsh is back in 4th place. Hasn't done too well in this championship. Finished way back in most races in the South Island. Sponsored by Premier Shirts and the ex-New Zealand Motorsport Championship champion from last year.
as Tony said, this is one of the showroom model races, the unmodified, but the policing of the class is very, very strict. The scrutineers go over them with a fine-tooth comb and measure everything like spring sizes and heights of cars, because obviously we don't want to see any cheating. We don't want to see people winning through an advantage that they have over their competitors for unfair reasons. So they self-police their formula very well, and this is quite unusual to see a new guy in the form of John Ranger leading a field, but clearly you're seeing that he doesn't appear to have any noticeable advantage like power or brakes. So we put it down to his good driving.
This is the final round of this Formula Ford Laser Sport Championship, and they have the points are provisional because of the fact that so many cars have already been disqualified this year for running illegal springs and many other components in the car, and the scrutineers have been very good at knocking out people, and people have been losing their points. They're not just fined, they've lost the points, and this has upset the whole points overall in the championship.
But here we have the race leader, John Ranger, the newcomer to the class, leading from Murray Starnes and from Warren Hislop.
Ranger braking very deeply in front, throws it in sideways, doesn't lock up, doing exceptionally well. Murray Starnes locking up, much smoke everywhere, getting very sideways. Yes.
So that order's changed. Hislop in front of Starnes. John Ranger still leads. Hislop second, Starnes third.
Hislop fought out all the races last year in terms of the overall for winning.
It's the battle for
Starnes
second
back
and third.
into second place. Like in many other classes of racing, always first in doesn't necessarily mean first out of these tight corners.
Speaking of people who have come out of this class, if you acknowledge that the predecessor to this class was the Escort Sport Series, we know that Craig Coleman has come straight out of this class after a year and done exceptionally well and showed a lot of talent early on. Another man who, by the way, came out of here is Ken Magent.
Yes, Kent did very well. He raced and won a few, well, he never actually won a race, but he did get very close to winning races.
Starnes having a go at John Ranger now, trying to get in the lead.
Neck and neck battle.
Starnes just got into second place ahead of Warren Hislop, but Warren Hislop into the next corner will probably have a braking advantage and take the lead back, so that the person who's coming second and third at the moment is position changing all around the circuit. Very close racing. Murray Starnes about to punt Warren Hislop in the back.
7-1-13-5. That's the order.
It's Warren Hislop second there. Murray Starnes is in third place. Behind him is Tony Marsh, car number 5, with Ed Lamont, the yellow Laser Sport, next behind him. We also have another ex-Shell Sport champion in this class in the form of Bryce Platt, and he will be in car number 77. I think he is about 7th position at the moment. So we have 2 ex-Shell Sport champions in this class. They've come to the class for cheap
On the
motor
final
racing.
lap now, coming down this time around for the checkered flag. Still John Ranger leading from Murray Starnes, Warren Hislop, Tony Marsh and Ed Lamont. That's the order. Looking at John Ranger, it looks no way that he's going to be challenged. The battle is going to be between Starnes and Hislop for second and third place.
Murray Starnes could probably get the right line out of this corner and take the lead into the next one.
You think it's
No,
a
he's been
formula
shot back.
You think it's a formula we might see you move into, Reg, with join your Shell Sport champions there?
No, David. I've got enough money to take a more expensive formula, so that's where I'll stay. But here we have John Ranger out in the lead, winning this race, ahead of Warren Hislop, Murray Starnes, Tony Marsh, Ed Lamont, all driving very close, very hard, not making mistakes.
Waiting this time round for the checkered flag. It's going to be John Ranger, the newcomer to the circuit.
Very close motor racing in the Laser Sports.
Great race. Looking down for second place now. Starnes and Hislop. Then Tony Marsh. Then Ed Lamont. The Laser Sports, as you can see, look a great deal slower than some of the other classes that are around this circuit. That's hardly surprising since they are box standard showroom cars.
And the overall winner in the championship, although it's provisional, should be Murray Starnes. Warren Hislop should be second. Ed Lamont will stay third.
The Ford Laser Sports lap record here is 75.1 seconds. Compare that in terms of time to the 53 and 54 seconds that the Formula Pacific cars are doing. And that lap record of 75.1 is held by L.V. Williams, a very, very hard charging driver. So the order, John Ranger, Number 7 first, Warren Hislop second, Murray Starnes third, Tony Marsh fourth, and Ed Lamont fifth. That's the way they finished. John Ranger, Warren Hislop, Murray Starnes. All in the same cars, of course. Slightly different colours, but the same cars.
And on radial ply tyres that are made in this country. That's why they handle different to the other cars that we see are normally on slicks.
So there is our race winner, John Ranger. An excellent laser sport race. Once again, very, very closely contested at the front of the field and all the positions. Number 7, John Ranger. That's a new lap record, we understand. It's unofficial at this stage, but he's just gone round in 74.5, which takes quite a heap off the lap record held by L.V. Williams. We'll be back a little later in the afternoon with more motor racing from Bay.
Third is Warren Burt, now the 1300 Starlet. Warren Steele's 2-litre Bluebird in the lead.
Just having another look at this little spin-off.
Yes, Warren Steele got brake late, Kieran Wills brake late, and he got out on the marbles, off backwards, nice bit of stopping, the engine stalled, Sand stopped him very, very safely before he hit that pole.
So Warren Steele now still away with that lead. The battle is for second place.
Between the starlets of Malcolm Webb from Palmerston North and Warren Burt from Timaru. Warren Burt is a very hard peddler. He's not scared of hitting another person around him. He takes his line. If someone's in the way, they get a shove. And I wouldn't be surprised if Bertie doesn't give Malcolm Webb a bit of a touch-up coming into this corner. They're very close. Warren Burt's got down the inside of him. Are they going to touch? Very close indeed. And Warren Burt just shoved in front of him. Just cut him up. That's it. Malcolm Webb won't like that. There could be another touch-up coming up. These competitors are forceful drivers. Yes, Malcolm Webb's got a dent in his daughter. Bertie gave him one. That's Warren Burt's style of driving. If you get him away, I'll punch you. As you'll see, Malcolm Webb's car's got a dent in the door. Jeff Burrows closing right in on Malcolm Webb as well, but not quite as aggressive as Warren Burt. He can shove through there. A great race between these drivers. Very tough. There's no points lost for hitting each other, and they're not scared to touch each other as they're going down the straight. And Jeff Burrows is back in 4th place, liable to pull out and pass Malcolm Webb down the straight here. Burrows coming up to 3rd place. He was the pole position winner in the first race, finished 4th. Something must be wrong with the car, but now he's got everything going properly, and he's forced his way from way back in the race back up to 3rd spot. So Jeff Burrows may very quickly latch on to Warren Burt and get into the lead.
Excellent piece of driving, Reg. Pull out of the slipstream, later on the brakes and getting the inside line of the corner.
Yes, and a lot heavier car too. His car weighs 1,750 pounds. The Starlet only has to weigh 1,450 pounds. So it was a very good piece of braking and a car that weighs a lot more than the Starlet. Warren Burt still in 2nd place. Warren Steele in the front in the lead in this 2-litre Nissan Bluebird. And Jeff Burrows, as Tony said, nice driving, forcing his way through in the 3rd place. Looks like they've got the Sunny going properly. There's Jeff Burrows, car number 11, the black car as you see him there, sponsored by Statesman Shirts. This car is owned by Cran Judge, and he's owned many cars that Kevin McNamara, Paul Fahey and Grant Walker have driven in the past. Well, Jeff Burrows lining up to take 2nd place down the straight. Warren Burt won't let him come down the inside, but Jeff Burrows got down the inside. Can he outbrake Warren Burt? Well, yes, he's tried very hard. He's got inside Warren. He's done it. Jeff Burrows is into 2nd place. Warren Burt will be very surprised to give him a hit there. That'll be Warren Burt's style, as I told you before.
That's exactly how he did it on the last lap. Nice driving from Jeff Burrows, twice in a row, 2 laps in a row, slipstreaming down the back straight, hopping out of it, late on the brakes, and hopping down the inside.
Well, the Starlets didn't try to block him under braking because they know his car weighs so much more and they wouldn't expect him to outbrake it. But he's obviously got the brakes balanced right between the front and the rear, and he just virtually bowled them away under braking, which is a great surprise.
So the race order, Warren Steele leading from Jeff Burrows and Warren Burt.
I wouldn't be surprised if Jeff Burrows doesn't now close in on Warren Steele and maybe take the race lead.
And Warren Steele, 1:06.5 is the lap time that he's on.
That's very good.
A little slower than the first one, Reg.
Yes, Jeff Burrows has just done a 66.2. He's lapping slightly faster than Warren Steele on a 66.5. These are quick times. Years ago with Shell Sport, with faster tyres and a lot lighter cars, we were able to do 63s. But doing a 66 now is a very, very good time. Both drivers right on the pace. 66 in any race is capable of winning. And Jeff Burrows closing right in on Warren Steele now. Can Jeff Burrows sight Warren Steele out and outbrake him? I doubt if he can. Warren's a cagey man, been around Shellsport for 7 years, doesn't make mistakes. He's got a bigger car, more power on the straight. He'll block him out in the corners and pull away on the straight. Jeff, in a better handling car, a younger competitor. How can he out-fumble Warren Steele? I don't know how he's going to do it.
Jeff Burrows getting awfully wide on a couple of those infield corners.
It's a good handling car, that Nissan Sunny, and so is the Nissan Bluebird in the lead. And you can put it anywhere on a circuit and do what you want it to do.
On the final lap now, Warren Steele holding out Jeff Burrows, and Warren Burt still in third place.
Nissan's coming out on top, 2 Nissans in the front, 2 Toyotas behind. A good day for Warren Steele today. Down the back straight, the extra power of the 2-litre car of Warren Steele should be able to get away from the Nissan Sunny, which is only 1500 cc's, but Jeff Burrows will get very close under braking and may be able to out-fumble him in the last 2 or 3 corners. Here's Jeff getting very close there, closing right up in the corner. Can he cause Warren Steele to take a line he doesn't want and pass him? Steele getting fairly wide there. Burrows still close. There's 2 corners to go. These drivers getting very close. Jeff Burrows wanting to outbrake him here, but Warren Steele took the inside line and nothing that Jeff Burrows could do about it. An excellent race. Jeff Burrows coming through from the back of the field. Only driven this car 3 times before. He's got down the inside of Warren Steele, the outside of Warren Steele.
Having a go at it this time, I don't think there's enough space left in the race for Burrows to get past
close.
Warren Steele.
It's going to be closer than we think it is.
Warren Steele hangs on from Jeff Burrows in second place and Warren Burt third in the second Shell Sport race of the day.
Malcolm
An
Webb was
excellent
fourth.
race, well driven from Warren Steele to stay at the front.
And an excellent race from Jeff Burrows, who doesn't really know this Nissan Sunny properly. And
actually, I would have been intrigued to see another couple of laps, Reg, because the way he was catching,
yep.
Jeff Burrows was catching up there. I think another couple of laps he might have had a go at it.
That's right, and Warren's still very happy. He should win the Shell Sport Championship. He's got a nice lead and a brand new motor car that he and Greg Lancaster built. It's a credit to them. Also, great credit to Jeff Burrows. Come out here from way back down the grid and come second. He's done very well. And 2 Starlets coming third and fourth. Kieran Wills, of course, could have been up with the play, but had a moment when he tried to brake late and went off on the sand. These cars will be scrutineered now. They'll be weighed. Kieran Wills still stuck in the sand here. I didn't think they'd get it out of there in a hurry. It was put there for safety precautions. In years past, there used to be rails on the outway.
So that's the race order, the finish in the second Shell Sport race of the day. Warren Steele in the Nissan Bluebird first. Second place, Jeff Burrows in the Little Sunny, and Warren Burt third in the Starlet. Of course, the Formula Pacific Championship has yet to be decided and looks like being decided in the last race. We still have the ANZ touring cars to come, and very shortly we have the Sports Sedans handicap race, the second of the day. While we have a couple of minutes in hand, let's just have a look at a Formula Pacific car. You've been watching the series and you've seen these cars running around, little single-seaters, and the man inside has his helmet and goggles and overalls on, and you can't really see a lot of the car. So we decided yesterday in practice to have a closer look at a Formula Pacific car. Throughout the series, we've talked a lot about Formula Pacific cars, and some of you must be wondering just what is a Formula Pacific car, other than, very obviously, a single-seater. Well, they have a Ford BDA 1600 engine, around about 230, 240 horsepower, and David Oxton, who's been co-commentating with us, and of course has spent a lot of time driving these cars, will explain some of the reasons why the suspension is adjustable in every facet. David, when we say it's adjustable in every facet, what do we exactly mean by that?
Well, Tony, the whole object of the car is obviously to go fast, and the object in getting around the track quickly is born out of these minute adjustments. And we'll cross with the camera to the front suspension of the car. We'll concentrate on the first one. This is the anti-roll bar or the anti-sway bar, and that has an adjustment internally by the driver's left hand, and this area here is in its stiffest point, and the driver can move it to there, which is its softest point.
So he can move that while he's racing?
While he's driving. And that may save a pit stop in practice, or during the race it may actually make a car which is understeering turn into a car which is oversteering, or at least make the balance of the car faster. Then he has the springs, and these units, for comparison, the one on my right hand is a stiff spring, hard spring, and that is a comparatively light one. And they are inserted underneath the wishbone, or the rocker arm in this case. It's about a 10 or 15 minute job in the pits to replace that spring. That has the effect of raising or lowering the car's ride height on the circuit. We look to keep the car about 2 inches off the ground at all times, but on a bumpy circuit, if we have a really bumpy track like Bay Park, we will need the stiffer spring at this circuit.
We have up this end as well the mechanism for brakes. We could explain that as well.
Well, simply speaking, and as briefly as possible, we have a master cylinder here and here. The master cylinder here is for the front wheels and there for the rears. In between those two cylinders, backed by the driver's foot brake pedal, is a bias arrangement directly under this panel, which when the driver turns a knob inside the car, he can translate bias from the front or to the rear hydraulic pressure. And that gives the advantage of pushing extra brake weight or efficiency onto the front or the rear as he feels. If it is raining, he moves the brake bias to the rear so that the front wheels don't lock up and he would lose his steering. For heavy, fast braking on a track like Bay Park, he will put a lot of braking onto the front by simply turning a knob inside the cockpit and adjusting to the front cylinder.
And that's a balance of percentage between rear and front brakes.
Correct, yes.
Let's move back along the car a little, having a look inside the monocoque where the driver sits. What aspects of this are interesting?
Well, obviously to the viewer, the most amazing thing is the tightness of the cockpit. This is Ken Smith's car, and literally there is only something like a foot between for his legs to work in. A very, very well molded seat area. The comfort and support is absolutely necessary, and this seat is molded to Kenny's shape perfectly.
But for example, you couldn't put Charlie O'Brien in Ken Smith's car.
Certainly not. He would have to have a new seat mold made. Seat belts, of course, to retain him in the event of an accident, but also to make him held tightly and firmly in the car so he can operate the steering wheel and the controls easily and quickly.
And explaining the seat belts just a little further, of course, down here, they are not only strapped over his shoulders, but down the bottom as well.
It's a 6-point harness. When he gets in the car, he links those two together. Then the shoulder straps and the crutch straps, which come up through the chassis and hook into that buckle as he's assembling. So it's very much like an aircraft pilot's seat, probably World War II, when he was going upside down.
Moving further along the car, looking at the engine, as we said, it's a BDA 1600, a similar kind of engine that was used in rallies in 2-litre form and has been used in a lot of forms of motorsport. What in particular about the 1600 version is special?
Well, for Formula Pacific, it is a regulated formula. It means that we must be no bigger than 1600 cc. We must use carburetors, not fuel injection as in some of the exotics. We have a controlled inlet valve size, and we have a certain restriction on carburetor size also now. But the main intention here is to make the engines as equal as possible so that the driver is the determining factor in winning and losing.
Almost ready for a start now in the Quick Picks Sport Sedans handicap race, the last of the day, and talking about Pacific cars as we were in the last few moments. The race which will decide the championship this year is the last race of the day, due to get underway at about 5 o'clock. In the meantime, we're still waiting for the start of this handicap race, and Wayne Huxford right off the back on 1:21. The front guys are going already. On the front, Armistead, Williamson and Allen. Then off 12 seconds, Hill and Miller. Off 25, Richardson and Broom. Then off 35, Higgins, Toms, Mercy and Geisenberg. And it goes all the way through to Wayne Huxford at the other end. Trevor Crowe is the man we would have expected to be right on the back of the grid, but in the second lap of the first Sedans race, he blew the engine on that little starlet, so he won't be able to start. But expect Wayne Huxford, Avon Hyde, Ian Algie and Don Gridley to be coming through this field all the way along the line. Now there's the back three leaving now. Don Gridley away. Don Gridley's on 1:16. Avon Hyde and Ian Algie on 1:19. And in just a couple of seconds, Wayne Huxford will be underway at 1:21. So the idea is that the people off the highest handicap, the quickest people from the first race, have to catch right up to the front of the field. So it's Avon Hyde and Ian Algie chasing through now to pick up, first of all, Don Gridley if they can, and then the rest of the field along the way. And what this turns out being is a good test of who can drive through traffic, because obviously to win the race, you've got to drive through the entire field if you start at the back.
Tony, I'd be putting my man on Avon Hyde, money on Avon Hyde, because of his tremendous experience in racing over the years. He is a formidable competitor and has the ability to get through the traffic, and his red Commodore, as you can see in your right-hand picture, he's already got past Don Brindley, and he's challenging very hard the red Alfetta in front of him, Ian Algie. So the red Commodore, on the left-hand side of your picture, behind the red Alfetta, will be the car I'll be watching to win this race. Ian Algie, the CRC car number 61 in the lead, in front of your picture there, still at the back of the field, will have a hard job holding behind, back Avonhide, Commodore behind him.
6 laps in this race, that's all they've got to get right from the back through the front of the field. Trying to get past Tony Rutherford's Mazda now, in Algie and Avonhide, neck and neck, going through the field. It's a question of who can drive quickest through the traffic.
Both with 6-litre engines and a similar brake horsepower as we saw down the back straight, neither having more top speed than the other.
In Algie in the alloy V8 powered Alfetta, and Avonhide in the 350 Chev powered Commodore. Now these two, if they get into a race, are going to hold each other up and cause them to be slower getting through the field. It's a fairly tight track, so it's a difficult enough job to drive through anyway. Bruce Madden and a 2-litre Escort there. Very quick car here, but just showing how much difference there is between the big 5 litres and a 2-litre turbo.
Ian Algie doing exceptionally well at the moment to hold Avonhide at bay, and is getting through the traffic very well without letting Avon through, but one slip and Avon will be through. That's Warwick Gray and the Silver Viva in the middle, being swallowed up by these 2 big 6-litre grunters.
Always an interesting form of race for the spectators, in particular a handicap race. You take the quickest and slowest times from the first race of the day and you work out on handicap so that every man in the field theoretically should cross the finish line at the same time. Now if they were to do this in a race like this, very obviously there'd be a rather nasty crash. It never works out that way because the traffic holds them up along the way.
Well, Ian Algie and the red Alfetta on the left there, with Avonhide behind him having a tremendous tussle, not more than a car length away from each other the whole way. They haven't had a touch yet as they get through this traffic. It's tremendously close racing. I mean, this is marvellous. They're not touching each other. Getting through the traffic is not easy.
Number 11 in there, they were just going past Brett Willis.
Yes, Avonhide managed to get around the outside of Ian Algie as he got held up in the sweeper there. Ian Algie blocked in, unfortunately, and nowhere to go, and now being blocked in by the slow traffic, and Avonhide, the Christchurch driver and his red Commodore, getting a bit of a break on him.
Very often we don't know who's won these races until it's announced officially afterwards, so don't be surprised if we call it on a provisional basis. Obviously the object of the exercise is for Avonhide and Ian Algie to get through and take first and second. Avonhide is getting the better of the traffic race at the moment. Ian Algie balked a couple of times, and Avonhide, as Reg Cook predicted, very, very fast. Here are the race leaders of the moment, but for how long?
Yeah, so I don't think it'll be very long before Avonhide manages to get through in front of these cars that started earlier on the race. They're passing all sorts of V8 machinery. All these cars have different engines in them, Holden engines, V8 engines, all sorts of engines.
Looks like one blown engine. Number 78, Barry Algie, Ian's brother, the big Monaro. Doesn't look very healthy, the amount of smoke that's coming out of it. But he's still continuing. Avonhide still trying to get his way through all this traffic.
He's getting closer to the front all the time. He's a tremendously big field.
We just heard that Barry Algie in car 78, the big Monaro in your picture there, is about to be black flagged.
He's obviously dropping a lot of oil on the circuit, and that smoke's coming from the oil, dropping on exhaust somewhere, and it's probably a good idea to black flag him because the Pacifics that are coming out later on don't need to be running in the oil that he's dropping.
He hasn't been black flagged yet. We're waiting to see if he is going to be. Yes, there's the black flag being held out now. That's the man they want to come in. He hasn't taken any notice of the black flag yet. We'll wait and see next time round if he comes in. Don Brindley moving through the field. Avonhide moving through beautifully. I don't think they're going to get there in time for the finish line, though. Quite a big handicap for Avonhide, who was on 1 minute 19 along with Ian Algie. But he's got the better of the battle with Ian Algie getting through the field. You can see the telltale marks of oil having been left on the circuit there, which the Pacific drivers won't be happy about a little later in the afternoon.
Trevor Crowe won the South Island, won the first race, and Murphy. It's another South Islander, it looks like, leading the second race.
Avon Hyde in this beautifully prepared Commodore 350 Chev engine, highly modified, and only really at the start of its development program. That is the checkered flag, so Avon Hyde has got right through to take the checkered flag. Ian Algie will be second. Looking back for third is going to be a little difficult because you'd have to work it out on the
looks like
handicap.
Ralph Mossman was third in this Beaver.
We'll call it Ralph Mossman at the moment. Certainly Avon Hyde won the race. Ian Algie through for second. A wonderful race for the South Islander. As we said, this car really at the start of its development program, and knowing the people behind it, Clyde Collins and Avon Hyde, I'm sure there will be a lot more development to come, and that is going to be a very competitive motor car.
The South Islanders have won both the sports sedan races today, so they'll be yelping and for joy down there, I'm sure.
It would have been intriguing to see Trevor Crowe. As we said at the start of that race, it is a drive through the traffic, and Trevor Crowe is exceptionally good at getting through traffic with a narrower car than Avon Hyde's. But as it turns out, Trevor Crowe blew the engine on the second lap of the first race. He continued but cooked the engine, and so he couldn't race in this last handicap race. But Avon Hyde has managed to keep the South Island's flag flying high. In the sports sedans, they have won both races of the day. This time Ian Algie second. And Avon Hyde, you may remember, we told you earlier in the day, is the man who didn't have enough funds to come up to this meeting. And as we understand it, the local fish and chip shop and some local fans of Avon Hyde's heard about that, managed to club together to get enough money to bring it up on the ferry, and they've driven it all the way up here and competed. Some of the spirit that goes with motorsport, particularly in tin top or saloon car racing. Ralph Mossman, I think we will call third at this stage. We're waiting to get those placings official. Avon Hyde certainly first, and Ian Algie second in the handicap race. And obviously they covered a great deal more ground, not only their winning margin, but a minute and 19 seconds handicap as well. Always makes for good racing when they've got to come from the back of the field. So that is the result after 6 laps in the handicap race, the second sports sedan race of the day. Avon Hyde from the South Island in the Commodore V8 wins. Ian Algie from the North Island in the Alfa Romeo. Alfetta with a 5-litre alloy V8 in it. And Ralph Mossman, not Ross Moorman, was third. So just waiting for a start in the ANZ Touring Car Series which is completed here today as well. And looking at the points situation, we will do that for you in a little while. ANZ Touring Cars have been exciting right through this series, between the Falcons, Commodores, and of course the BMWs that have come in latterly. Kevin Bagent in one BMW, and of course Neville Crichton in the other. The ANZ Touring Car Championship is to be finally decided here. That's actually very good, David Oxton, in that not only in Formula Pacifics but in ANZ Touring Cars as well, we have the championship decided in the last race of the series.
Fantastic day's racing here at Bay Park, bringing the final championship, the finals of the championships in various classes, but the ANZ, the premier saloon car championship in the country at the present time, and one that the crowd love to see, these fabulous big BMWs racing against the the might of the Fords.
And one of the Fords who is leading the series at the moment, that driven by Leo Leonard, the Ford dealer team entry. They lead the championship at the moment with 25 points. Leo Leonard is a little off the pace here in terms of the BMW's times. Let's have a word with Leo Leonard and see what he expects being slower.
Leo Leonard, you're leading this series. What's your plan for today?
We have to come second to win the series today, so we're not as quick as the BMWs, but we hope to keep in contact with them and observe the situation during the race. And 24 laps is a long way. Getting towards the end of the race, if we can look after the brakes, look after the tyres, and we're in a position to take one of them, well, that's what I'd like to do.
So you'll be just aiming at second place, basically?
If we can win, we'd certainly like to win, but second place we'd be very pleased with.
The Falcons have had a lot of problem with axle shafts, particularly getting off the line. Will you be taking account of this in your driving style?
Yes, I'll be tiptoeing off the line, I'll be sacrificing a bad start for a good finish. Now the axle problem, it's no reflection on the car, it's the big wide tyres and the amount of horsepower that you have to put through the standard axles just makes them a bit delicate.
Of course, you're up against a slightly different problem. You're running basically a family-type sedan against what are really thoroughbred races, aren't you?
Yes, and there's a lot of work to get them into the condition to be reasonably competitive. It's good, though, that the regulations permit us to run with the thoroughbred type cars because the public like to identify the cars that they see running on the street. And it's good for the manufacturers. It injects an element of prestige into the series.
That's Leo Leonard, the points series leader at the moment, hoping to hold on to his championship points. One of his challenges will be Ken Page in the white BMW, you see. Another who can't challenge for points, but will be looking for the race today, is Neville Crichton, who has come into the series latterly. And we spoke to him a little earlier about his chances, knowing that he can't win the series.
Well, Neville Crichton, obviously a series win's out of the question for you, so what's your technique for today? Out and out win?
We'd like to win today. We didn't enter the series to win it. We've only done 2 races, or this is the second race. So we'd like to go out and win this race just to prove how good we are for Wellington.
What was your object in bringing this car over here then?
Well, we wanted to do the Benson Hedges series, which we won. Then was the Nissan Q series, or now it's the Nissan Sport series. And we feel we're going to be pretty competitive in that as well.
Do you reckon it's been a worthwhile experiment bringing this car all the way to New Zealand?
Yeah, I'm sure it has. I think the public have proved that. They've had bigger crowds at every meeting because of Teller's car and my car. I think we've had better crowds because of the racing between the two of them.
It's a pretty decent sort of a car to drive too, isn't it?
Yeah, I love the car. It's beautiful. It's just like getting into a single-seater.
And the qualifying times for the 2 BMWs, Neville Crichton's and Ken Bajan's, were exactly the same. They have qualified first and second, but Neville Crichton did it a few minutes before Ken Bajan did, so he gets pole position. But both the BMs on exactly the same time to 100. We'll be back in just a few moments with the start of the ANZ Touring Cars last race of the series, where the championship will be decided. Meantime, back to the studio and Peter briefly.
All right, thanks, Tony. We will be going back to the ANZ Touring Car race just after the start, because that race at Bay Park is due to start at about the same time as the first leg of the treble from Ellerslie. It's race 7, so we can go over there now just to catch that action before we return to Bay Park.
The Olympic Swiss Watch handicap is over 1,400 metres, and with the 4 scratchings there are 15 starters in the race, headed by number 1 Silver Rhapsody. But for the full field, here's Grant.
Number 1 is Silver Rhapsody, 3 Eminent Lady, 4 Inchmore, 5 Cartola, 6 is Lyme Regis, 7 Narimu, 9 Crowd Action, 10 St Mary, 11 Charlotte Roselle, 12 is Chowd, 14 Super Tune, 15 Classic Boy.
Did you have a father?
And at number 19, Mr Contractor.
Fairly warm favourite at the moment appears to be number 1 Silver Rhapsody. To Rapa, but previous to that had quite good form. 290, 150 for number 1.
It's got 57 kilos to carry in this race. It's certainly going to have to be good to win it. It's back to is almost unbeatable at $2.90 and $1.50. Peter Johnson, though, riding extremely well at the moment, and this horse has been very, very consistent.
Here is number 12 Chowd, Debbie Hughes to ride for Peter Mackin of Takanini, outsider at 26 and 680.
Had a win first up for the season, but it's been pretty disappointing of late.
Peter Johnson just off the back there at the moment, not aboard Silver Rhapsody. 3-year-old by Charivari out of Silver Tess. Some of the Charivaris get a little bit stirred up before a race. Seems to be a thing right through the breed. 14 has gone forward, which was Super Tune, not given a big chance. So red light now, and tote has closed for this, the Olympic Swiss Watch Handicap, as the last horse goes in, and they're all set to go.
Action Classic Boy. St. Mary ready, they're off. Cartola bounced out to lead them clearly 2 lengths. Silver Rhapsody goes up to be handy. Now followed out Charlotte Roselle, followed out behind these Lime Regus. Working round wide there is Narimo, a length and a half. Classic Boy up wide, then followed on the inside inch more of Mr. Contractor, Sunshiner in that group as well as they work up the rise. Eminent Ladies handy. Now back towards the rear. Now last of all is Super Tune, Powder Coat second last, St. Mary, Crowd Action and Short in that group. 900 metres to travel, and the pacemaker is now Charlotte Roselle with Classic Boy on the outside heading it off. 3 or 4 back, Silver Rhapsody on the rails with Mr. Contractor, a length and a half, then Lime Regus, a half back, Sunshiner from Cartola, then Eminent Lady, a length and a half in the clear now is Inchmore, 2 back behind these as they work down. Mr. Contractor's actually back, it's Narimu, the one that's up handy, then Powder Coat there, followed by St. Mary as they work to the turn, then Short and 4 away, Crowd Action and Super Tune around the turn, 550 to go, and it's pacemaker Charlotte Roselle. Lime Regus now tackling it out wide on the track. Silver Rhapsody poised behind the leaders with Classic Boy and Narimu. Into the straight, 300 to go, and it's Lime Regus. Here's Silver Rhapsody starting to stretch out. Coming out wider is Cartola and Charlotte Roselle on the inside. Lime Regus still in front. Silver Rhapsody ridden hard now, levels from Cartola. St. Mary a big run late, but it's Silver Rhapsody in front with 100 to go from running on late again or kicking again. Lime Regus, but it's Silver Rhapsody. Silver Rhapsody's going to hold out Lime Regus. Third is Cartola in a photo with St. Mary. Short is next, then Charlotte Roselle, Narimu, Powder Coat, then followed Inchmore, Eminent Lady, Super Tune, Crowd Action, then followed home by Mr. Contractor, Sunshiner and Classic Boy.
So the favourite number 1, Silver Rhapsody, too good in the run home. Started to be feeling the effects in the latter stages, but proved too strong all the same and has carried the punters through at $2.80 and $1.50. Final stages now of the race.
And as they turn into the straight, it's Charlotte Roselle who immediately takes over. But look for Silver Rhapsody in the green, starting to poke through now. And Peter Johnson just nursing it along at this stage. Charlotte Roselle in the centre of the track. Cartola starting to come home very strongly. But Silver Rhapsody, Peter Johnson getting to work now. Charlotte Roselle is still there. Lime Regis and Cartola. But Silver Rhapsody, Lime Regis coming quickly. But Silver Rhapsody's got enough in hand and it gets there. It's pretty close for third as we see the winner going across. Silver Rhapsody wins it by about half a length from Lime Regis, and it looks like it's Cartola in third place. Yes, number 5 has the call, so 1, 6 and 5 is the call.
So Peter Johnson has yet another success, and he'll be pleased with that. Aboard the favourite Silver Rhapsody. Well, that's the situation here at Ellerslie as we watch the horses come back to scale now, and there's no doubt about it. It's always good, I suppose, to see the punters carried through.
Well, it was a good effort by Silver Rhapsody. Had 57 kilos to carry and was very much the top weight in the race, but very nicely nursed along by Peter Johnson. You noticed in the replay that when he put it into the gap, he was just nursing it along, and then the pressure went on about 200 out, took the stick out and rode it extremely well. It was only half a length clear at the finish with Lime Regis closing quickly, but a good effort by the top weight to win it.
So number 1, Silver Rhapsody by Charivari out of Silver Tess has won the Olympic Swiss Watch in the hands of Peter Johnson. We'll bring you the dividends a little later from Ellerslie.
That was race 7, first leg of the treble, and the next at Ellerslie is the railway, second leg of the double, also second leg of the treble. It's time to go at 25 minutes to 5. In the meantime, we now go live to Bay Park in Mount Maunganui, where very kindly the drivers cut their engines in the ANZ touring car race, but they're now ready for a start as we go back to Tony Palmer, Reg Cook and David Oxton.
Thank you, Peter. Not far away from a start now in the ANZ Touring Car class, where the championship, as we told you a little earlier, will be decided by this race. Neville Crichton is not in it in terms of the championship. Kent Bagent certainly is. Leo Leonard is certainly in there. Having a little trouble with starting Kent Bagent's BMW by the look of it. That's Bruce Addison's Pine Pack Ford Falcon on the start line. This is the car that has had some modifications carried out here by Craig Pullman in New Zealand. That's one of the reasons why it has been going so well this season. But unfortunately, because of a stewards meeting here yesterday, Bruce Addison's car has been excluded from Pukekohe and Manfield results because the exhaust manifolds on the Pine Pack Falcon did not comply with the ANZ Touring Car regulations. So the points at this stage, Bruce Addison eludes his massive points lead to Leo Leonard, who leads with 25 now, from Bill McFarlane with 20, and then Kent Bagent and Bruce Addison have 18 points. So the championship looks like being decided between Kent Bagent and Leo Leonard. Kent Bagent, the quickest qualifier, at the same time as Neville Crichton. Neville Crichton gets pole because he posted that time just slightly before Kent Bagent did, so he takes pole from Kent Bagent, but the qualifying time was precisely the same. And Reg Cook, it's intriguing that these BMWs have got very much quicker than last year's Commodores and Falcons.
Yes, there's a big difference here that they're running on slicks, so that's the reason why the times are so much faster. And under the Group A rules, the Falcons and the Commodores that ran here before had to weigh more because of their engine size, and that's allowed the smaller engine 3.5 litre BMWs to be competitive. And under Group A rules, there is a certain weight you have to run for engine size, and that's helped, as I said before, these BMWs. There are many other cars in the world that could be competitive with these BMWs, but they're not here. We hope to see them later on in some events later on.
Lining up on the grid now. Neville Crichton in the black BMW will have pole. Beside him will be Kent Bagent. The final round where the championship will be decided. Many exciting finishes here today, and when we're on the grid, we'll try and get a word with Leo Leonard, who has radio telephone in his car, and he'll tell us just what it is like. Leo Leonard, who now leads the points championship with 25 points. We'll see if we can get a word with him in just a moment as he moves up onto the grid. Remember, at Pukekohe, he had a problem with the axles. He broke an axle on the start line. This time he's hoping to get away just a little bit slower and protect the axles. Leo Leonard, can you hear us? Leo, I wonder if you can tell us the problem that you had with rear axles breaking. Is that a problem inherent with Ford Falcons or simply the result of too much horsepower?
It's the result of too much horsepower and the traction that you're able to get through the very large racing tyres.
Leo, we'll let you, when the 1 minute board comes out, we'll come and talk to you again, and you can talk us down to the start and give us an impression of just what it's like inside those cars.
Roger.
Leo Leonard will come back to us shortly. We'll get the 1 minute board and then a 30-second board and see if we can get an impression of what it's like for the driver sitting not on the front row of the grid but down just a little ways and having to get through that traffic with the two BMWs, notoriously slow starters. Bruce Addison on the outside of the grid there, Bill McFarlane behind him, Leo Leonard. It's an interesting front couple of rows. There's Bruce Fowler in the Commodore, which had some problems yesterday with locking up front brakes. The front calipers on these Commodores are a little outdated now. They only have a single acting caliper and a mechanical device that pulls the other side onto the disc. And that mechanical other end of the caliper wasn't working yesterday, so that the disc wasn't releasing. And he destroyed 2 race tyres before they discovered what the problem was. Leo Leonard, almost ready for a race start. Can you talk us down to the start?
Going for a nervous ritual here, Tony. Just the seatbelt, ensuring that the first gear is exactly where it was. And the clutches, ensuring that the clutch is being released slowly. The foot is scrambling as the right tire jumps up on the road. Nursing away quietly to look out for the next.
We'll try and come back to Leo Leonard a little later in the race as it develops. But look at the two BMWs sprinting away to a good start. Bruce Fowler in there and Bruce Addison as well. That's Neville Crichton leading Kent Bagent. These two, remember, had exactly the same qualifying time, to within 100th of a second. Gary Pedersen in there, up in 5th place in the little Gemco Fiat Ritmo 130 R-Bar. That's a good start. Neville Crichton still holding out. Kent Bajan, Bruce Anderson behind them. Leo Leonard in 4th place. This is where we expect the battle to be, in the front with the 2 BMWs. If it comes down to a race, I think I'd put my money on Kent Bajan. We've already had a couple of people off the circuit. That's not affecting the front of the field, though. What do you think, Reg Cook? Would you be prepared to have a bet on a race between these two, having qualified the same?
Kent Bajan is a very determined man. They won the Benson Hedges, he won at the Grand Prix of Kovakari, he competed down at Mansfield, and if he wins this race, he can win the championship. We shouldn't count out Bruce Anderson either. While he lost his points from illegal exhaust manifolds in previous rounds, if he's on the same number of points as Kent Bajan, and he too will want to win this race. Whoever wins this race out of Kent Bajan or Bruce Anderson, if Leo Leonard isn't in 2nd position, will win the ANZ Touring Car Championship. Kent Bajan trying very hard.
The ideal result at the moment is exactly the way they are. If Kent Bajan wins with Neville Crichton between he and Bruce Anderson, and then Leo Leonard in 4th place, that will win the championship for Kent Bajan. That's exactly the way he wants it. Bajan having got in front of Neville Crichton, and Crichton still sticking to his tail. If it comes down to a race, I would still be prepared to back Kent Bajan, but the two of them are going to battle it out all the way through the race.
Kent Bajan went to Macau to race his BMW, get some more experience, and he feels that while he was there, he learnt a lot, which should help him have superior performance over.
Neville Crichton getting a little sideways there as Kent Bajan comes out of the corner. Bruce Anderson right wide into turn 4, heading up the pit straight now into the big sweeper. This is where Kent Bajan was having some trouble in practice. He was explaining to us that the BMW initially in practice wouldn't go round this sweeper without getting on and off the gas. And David Oxton, I'm sure it's very important that you stay constant on the gas pedal around a constant radius curve.
Well, you're seeing the benefit of Neville's better line around there. He's able to draw alongside, or at least get a bit of advantage on the Tullis car in that area. But certainly that sweeper is an area where you need to apply a gentle amount of throttle and feed it on gradually. You have to back off, then you lose the inertia, the motion, and then you get Neville, like it is, making him pounce down one side or the other of Kent Bajan.
This is a 24-lap race, and the BMWs are noted for their reliability. Neither of them has had a problem in a race so far this year. Both of them getting shaped up for the Nissan Sport Series later in the year.
Kent Bajan saying last night to us that although he and Neville are very good friends off the circuit, he expected that if they got very close, and now there's a yellow flag out, so we've lost somebody around this corner. Yes, in fact, the car upside down. Too hard to tell from the underpan what it is, but driver's waving his hand, so he's safe and sound. But going back to the lead battle here, Kent said he's quite prepared to mix it with Neville. If the going gets tough, they'll be knocking a few doors and mudguards, and whilst those BMW panels are obviously very expensive, they're prepared to give it all to win this race. It's very important to both of them. Remembering, of course, the first 2 long-distance races, the B&H Series, were won by the black BMW in your picture. The final race, the big one, was won by Kent Bajan in the white Talus number 3 car. And the most recent grudge matches, that at Mansfield and the Grand Prix meeting, again won by Kent Bajan. So Neville really got the bit down between his teeth now, and he's really going to try and push Kent today.
These two have had some amazing battles. They really have had some excellent races, even in the B&H, which is a 6-hour-long race. It was a race right down to the final line, and it came down to one had a quicker pit stop than the other, but they've had superb racing all year. The two of them very, very competitive. As Red said a little while ago, Kent Bajan went to Macau and got some more experience there racing with the top BMWs in the world, and Neville Crichton has been in Australia doing some racing to hone his skills as well. But two of them so much quicker than the Falcons, as you can see. Neville Crichton having a go. Not enough time.
Remembering, of course, that whilst the yellow flag is out, and that's the flag that's being waved at the area where we saw the car had turned over, no passing must take place in that area. So Neville is restricted now to passing in 3 corners. He cannot pass on the fast sweeper bend until the accident is removed or the yellow flag has been taken away.
Neville Crichton has just done a 64.1 lap time. So they're on good pace for a 24-lap race. By the way, the car you saw turned over that we just saw the underbelly of was with Jacob in a Laser Sport, which he's got over. He is out and okay.
In fact, I think, Tony, that might be the car that won the Laser Sport race a little earlier on in the hands of John Rainford.
I don't think it'll be winning this one.
Now these drivers will be out to preserve those tyres, and you see the angle of the cars on the fast turns and the slow turns. These BMWs are very fast, but they're also very hard on their tyres. That is, they overheat the tyres, and any overheating of the tyres can cause a margin to be built up, or should we say, the leading driver could pull away if, in fact, say Neville had overheated his tyres coming off that sweeping turn. Now here's interesting. Leo Leonard is through now to 3rd place. He's obviously eased back the axles. He's taken a nice line off the grid, but he's forcing his way up to 3rd place now.
Neville Crichton flashing the lights on the BMW there, trying to get through. There's Leo Leonard in front of Bruce Anderson. I wonder if Bruce Anderson's had a problem of some kind, or if Leo Leonard has just got past him. Certainly Bruce Anderson was well ahead of him earlier on. Leo Leonard is the man who has to catch up the places. He's into 3rd place now, driving through the traffic just beautifully.
Leo put a new set of tyres on his car for this race and felt that if he got a good chance of winning the championship, that it was worth spending the money, and he felt that the car would handle better here because of the new tyres than it had at Pukekohe.
It's Neville Crichton having a go at Ken Page. Can't do it there, neck and neck. Have a look at them into this corner, the 2 BMWs. Absolutely side by side. Who's going to get to the corner first? Ken Paget braking a little later. He goes up the inside. We'll see if we can have a word with Leo Leonard in 3rd place. Understand, of course, that he's very busy driving. We'll see if he has time to talk to us during the race and what his thoughts are at this stage. Tony Palmer calling Leo Leonard. Can you talk to us at the moment?
Yeah, Leo, Tony.
Leo, obviously you need a better place than the one you've got at the moment. You've got it to 3rd. How does the car go at the moment?
But everything's all right with the car. The temperature's well up, but it's a really hot day. Oil pressure's all right. Just taking it up to 5,500 revs down, 6th gear. Coming up to 5,500 and third, about 100 mile an hour. Hard on the brakes because we're going around the 6-weaver. Down the steering wheel, but it's really hot inside the car here, and the track breezy as anything. Slowed up by a little car here, but we can't help that. It's same for everybody. Into the back straight now, 5,500 revs. Top gear about 110, 120, 130. Hard on the brakes here now for the end of the straight. Rover in front of us all crossed up, blocked up his brakes. Hope he lets me through. It cost a lot of time then.
Leo, we noticed a little earlier in one of the earlier races that one of the cars may have left a little oil out there. Are the signs there of oil on the track? It is very slippery, as you told us.
Still got Bruce behind me, giving me a hard time. Back to you, Tony.
Leo Leonard talking to us, doing very, very well to drive and talk to us, give you a little idea of what it's like driving inside one of these big ANZ touring cars. Bruce Anderson, as he said, pushing it very hard now, so he can't talk to us much more.
I noticed sitting on the grid that the crew of Leo Leonard's car were rubbing the stones off the tyres, and it's got to remember that these drivers are driving over curbs. There is stones around on the outside of the circuit, and the front 2 competitors and everybody as well will have to be very careful to keep off the stones and not get punches, because in the Group A races with these tyres so far this season, a lot of leads or a lot of positions in the races have been changed due to punches. So while we have Ken Bajan in the lead at the moment, a puncher of any sort will put paid to his chances in the championship.
This is the race now for Ken Bajan leading to win this championship.
Bit of a lock-up there for Neville Crichton. This is reminiscent of a fault that appeared in the car when Wayne Wilkinson was driving it at Manfield in the long-distance race, when he had trouble adjusting the brake balance. And we were talking about this with Formula Pacifics. These cars have also this cockpit adjustable brake bias, where they can put more or less braking efficiency on the front or rear as the driver chooses. And he's probably adjusting that right at this moment.
At the moment he would have too much bias on the front, that's why his front's locking up, so he'd have to adjust it to get a bit more on the rear. But earlier on in the race, it appeared that the BMW of Neville Crichton, as we can see it now, is definitely handling better in the corners than Kent Bajan's. But as the race goes on and the tyres get hot, these tyres are soft compound and the ability to corner on them changes. And so while one car might have an advantage early on in the race, as the race progresses, then that advantage sometimes disappears. And it appears that Neville Crichton's car isn't handling quite as well as Ken Bajan at the moment. and that's probably because his tyres have got hotter.
Such is the pace of development of this Group A category. In fact, one of the cars which Neville and Kent Bajan will be coming up to lap, the yellow, white and red car immediately in front of them is a Commodore. In fact, it's Veen Smith's Commodore, and it was the one formerly driven by Robbie Francevic and John Morton, and won a convincing B&H race here just 2 years ago. Look at the difference now, 2 years on. Group A BMW cars lapping competitors which were winning races just 2 years ago.
The Group A ANZ Touring Car lap record round the circuit is 70.1 seconds. We heard before that Neville Crichton was doing 64.1, so they've gained 6 seconds in a year. 4 seconds of this is probably with tyres, but 2 seconds a lap would be the difference, the superiority of the BMW over the lap record holder, which was Leo Leonard and his Falcon last year.
Now the championship points are awarded as 9 for first, 6 for second, 4 for third in the previous rounds, and today's points are double. So if they had been normal points on this basis of the finish now, Leo Leonard would in fact have finished 2 points ahead of Kent Bajan. But because it's double points today, Kent Bajan, if he stays where he is, will win the championship from Leo Leonard in second place.
We're very lucky to have Red Cook here. He's a sort of a human computer, and he gives hand signals and says no and yes to the right questions at the right time, or at least some of the time. But anyway, back to the race, and we obviously saw the lovely little Fiat of Gary Pedersen. Gary and the Dave McMillan used this car to some effect in the long distance series, the little 130. They are in fact leading their category, the up to 2 litre Group A category, handsomely. And in fact, Gary wanted to mix it a little bit better or a bit closer to the bigger cars. There he is in our screen, little Contour sponsored 130 Abarth Fiat. So he's comfortably leading his category, but certainly can't mix it with these big Fords. Now, in fact, Gary may have a problem. He's right to the outside and a lot slower than he normally would be. Remembering he had this axle trouble, as for Koei. However, it's a bit hard to say. He's making room for the faster cars to come through, but I wouldn't expect him to concede so much ground to that Bill McFarlane car.
Certainly not like Gary Pedersen to move that far across.
Gary Pedersen's a hard driver, and he isn't going to let anyone pass easily. He's definitely got a problem inside that car. I would say it's very similar to the axle problem he had at Pukekohe, because he's a bit scared to put the power on hard and push from side to side.
Just spare a thought for Gary Pedersen in that car. Imagine what it's like trying to drive a 2-litre twin-cam front-drive car that develops 190 or 200 horsepower with one axle broken. I can assure you from the descriptions I heard from Gary Pedersen and Dave McMillan, it was quite a handle. Just working out those points for you, if the finish the way they are, have a problem there with Kent Bajan, was it?
Gary Pedersen, in fact, all in the pits. But Kent is easing away from Neville Crichton now. He's got this race firmly in control, so he will be really trying to preserve his tyres and his brakes. Obviously, the power he's able to regulate very easily without straining that wonderful BMW engine. But he'll be cautious on these tyres without turning in too harshly on ruining the outside tyres. It's the right front and the right rear tyre that will be the problem if it is overheated.
Just working out the points. If Kent Bajan finishes where he is, with Neville Crichton between he and Leo Leonard, the points will end up with Kent Bajan on 36 and Leo Leonard on 35. That's so long as Neville Crichton stays between the two of them. Just over the halfway stage now in this 24-lap race, still Kent Bajan leading from Neville Crichton, Leo Leonard in third place and Bruce Anderson in fourth.
In fact, we think we've had an update. Bruce Anderson would be past Leo Leonard now and up to third place, but we'll check on this. We'll see when we get onto camera.
There's Bajan round now. There's Neville Crichton coming behind him. Now looking for the first of the Falcons. Still Leo Leonard? No, that's not Falcon there. We've got the wrong car. Just looking back now and waiting for the two Falcons. Bruce Anderson's is the big pine pack one. That looks like Leo Leonard through. There's Leo Leonard. This is third place. Bajan in the lead. Crichton behind him. That's third place Leo Leonard, and Bruce Anderson back in fourth place by quite a margin.
Certainly since these cars have become, these two Ford Falcons have become technically equal,
that is in the most recent races. We know that they have become so. Leo Leonard seems to have slightly the upper hand. We can remember back in the early ANZ races, Bruce Anderson was winning comfortably. And there's a really tight manoeuvre by Leo Leonard around the outside of a little Avenger there. His heart would be pumping, holding onto that big Ford around the outside on those marbles, I would think so.
Yeah, Leonard just drives so well through traffic.
Yes, it should be noted that these cars once again are on slicks and they're driving around cars that are on radial tyres, which are sort of the New Zealand Assemble type cars, the Laser Sports and Nissan Bluebirds, the Telstars, Treadiers and Mirages are all on radial tyres as compared to these big cars which are on slicks. And the handling characteristics are totally different. What Leo did then was not an easy manoeuvre.
In fact, we think that Gary Pedersen rejoined the race from his pit stop and stopped on the back straight. In fact, there is Gary. He's looking at something in the seat. Maybe he's dropped his nose. It's a marshal. Just making sure. Probably Gary's wanting to get the car a little bit further off the straight. It's a bit of a hazard there. But unfortunately, the axles that broke in the earlier rounds with Gary and Dave. Unfortunately, Gary wasn't able to get a genuine axle out from Italy and has had a New Zealand-made hand-turned axle installed. We would think that would be the problem.
So Leo Leonard still in third place. First place still held by Kemp Paget. If he can hang on to the end of the race, he has won the ANZ Touring Car Championship. Arriving late on the scene, he didn't compete in the early rounds. He didn't go down to Wigram. And since he rejoined the series, or joined it late in the North Island rounds, Kemp Paget has driven beautifully. He has been unbeatable so far. The only competition he has had is from Neville Crichton in a similar car. And if he stays where he is, as we said, it will be the ANZ Touring Car Championship to Kemp Paget.
Kemp Paget's car this weekend running for the first time, a brand new BMW 635 racing engine, or race prepared engine. It was actually taken to Macau for one of the international stars in the Group A race there. Kent negotiated to bring it out here. Such is his desire to do well in the big Nissan Sport race later in the month of January in the streets of Wellington. But this is the ideal warm-up for any driver who can say, well, he's won the races that mattered in the lead-up to the big street race. And Kent will be very proud of this very, very polished effort he's putting in.
Certainly has become a very polished driver in recent months, Kemp Paget. When he got the BMW, there were a lot of people who wondered how well he would go. Everybody knew that the car was competitive, but Kemp Paget's driving has become more and more professional, particularly over this series. And he really has looked like a winner, and it bodes well for 26 days from now, when we have the Wellington Street Race, where the two BMWs will be joined by another two, and it will be very exciting competition. These BMWs very obviously so much quicker than the Falcons and Commodores in this ANZ touring car class, which has become Group A. An enormous range of vehicles in there and a huge range of time gap between them. Leo Leonard still hanging on to third place, the best performed of the older style cars competing in Group A now.
But whilst we're talking about the Commodores being slow, during the races that we're going to see in a couple of months' time, there's a Commodore coming over driven by Peter Brock and Larry Perkins, so I wouldn't expect that Commodore to get beaten by as much as these ones are here today.
That is the new homologated BK Commodore that Peter Brock intends bringing up. But Kent Paget still wandering away with this race and building up quite a substantial lead from Kent Paget, still holding on to that lead. Neville Crichton still second. Kent Paget still hanging on. There's our third place man, Leo Leonard, looking back now to Bruce Anderson to see how far he is behind. As Leo Leonard is up to the sweeper, waiting now for third place to come round. There is Bruce Anderson. That's the gap between Leo Leonard and Bruce Anderson, between third and fourth places. See if we can get another word with Leo Leonard as the race has settled down just a little and his position a little more consolidated than it was earlier on. Tony Palmer calling Leo Leonard. Can you talk to us now? bit busy there at the moment, Leo, by the looks. Try and get a word with him if we can. But obviously it's a difficult job to drive in a race like this and to talk to us as well.
This is lap 18 of the 24-lap ANZ Touring Car Championship final. Kent Bagent leading from Neville Crichton in the John Andrew Cars 635 BMW. Leo Leonard in his 5.7 litre Ford Falcon. And fourth, Bruce Anderson in a similar machine, also 5.7 litres.
Fifth, I would think, would be Bruce Fowler and his Commodore.
On lap 20 now, still trying to get a word with Leo Leonard, but it seems as though he's a little busy to talk to us, quite understandably, in the race. Kent Bagent still holding off Neville Crichton. Leo Leonard third, Bruce Anderson fourth. 4 laps remain. It really has been excellent for the crowds to see these BMW 635 CSIs in the country. They have not one dominating the series, but 2 of them fighting it out throughout. Benson and Hedges races and in the ANZ Touring Car Series, the crowds have enjoyed a wonderful spectacle and seen these BMWs and really bring down the lap times over last year.
Well, presuming the positions stayed as they are at the present point, if Kent Bagent was to win this race, with double points, he would go from 18 to 36, and that would give him the championship. Presuming Leo Leonard stays in third place, he would go to 35 points. Sorry, 33 points. 8 and 5, 33 points. So it's very close. A long way to go in terms of tyre life yet. But that, in fact, Kent will be hoping that Neville stays just about that distance. Not too much pressure on him, but he'll also be hoping that he stays in the race, because if Neville was to go out of the race for any reason, Leo Leonard will become the ANZ champion by taking a second place. So these boys are really watching for it now. Kent can't do any more than win, and he's doing that, or at least he's leading this race very well. He can't do any more, so I suppose Neville Crichton holds the championship in his grasp to whoever is likely to get it.
Well, neither of these BMWs can afford to make mistakes. The tyres are very hot, and punch will be the only thing that will affect it. The reliability of the cars is so good. So I'm sure that Neville Crichton will be doing his best to, one, win the race, and also, if he can't do that, protect Kent Bagent to help him win the championship.
Okay, I understand Leo Leonard is trying to talk to us at the moment. Calling Leo Leonard, can you hear us at the moment?
I've been having trouble with the soles of my shoes melting, and the feet have been sticking to the throttle pedal.
Just trying to translate what you're saying. You're a little vague there, Leo. I'm sorry, what was the problem you're having?
Okay, like this. Car starts understeer, going into the corner, and oversteer coming out of the corner. But I guess it's the same for everybody.
Okay, Leo, it looks as though if you can hold your place there with Neville Crichton between you and Kent Bagent, you're going to end up second in the series. There's not a lot you can do about it, I guess.
No problem.
Leo
It's not going to be good enough for us. We're a bit disappointed about that, but we've done our best.
Leo, thanks for talking to us. Over and out. Leo Leonard talking to us there while he's driving in the race. He knows the situation as well as anybody, that he's going to lose the series by a couple of points from Kent Bagent, so long as Neville Crichton stays between the two of them. Coming down to the final laps in the race now. Kent Bagent just holding off Neville Crichton. This is becoming quite a battle. Back to the way it was in the early laps. Neville Crichton's going to have a late go at him. He's got nothing to lose. He's got championship points that are way down on Kent Bagent's.
Notice that Neville Crichton being able to use more circuit than Kent. Kent having to block him out of it is having to do that means he's going slower. Kent may be getting a bit rattled. The championship's at stake. There's only a couple of laps to go, and the other BMW is so close to him. He doesn't appear to be using the circuit quite as well as he was earlier on the race.
Those tyres are getting very sticky on what should we say, very hot, and translating what Leo said on his recent talk, he said it was understeering going into the corner and oversteering coming out. And I think, Reg, that would suggest that his rear tyres are starting to overheat, and we must wonder then, how are these tyres holding up on these BMWs?
Well, we're on the last lap, so they don't have to worry too much. Kent will not be wanting to make any mistakes. He'll be careful as he passes other cars, and he's got half a lap to go.
Okay, on the last half of the last lap to decide the ANZ Touring Car Championship. Kent Bajan coming round, making a late charge in the series. If he comes down and takes the checkered flag, he wins the series overall, provided that Neville Crichton stays between he and Leo Leonard in third place. Kent Bajan almost finished the race now. Neville Crichton making a late charge on him, but not quick enough. Coming down this time with a checkered flag. If our lap count is right, this is the checkered flag this time for Kent Bajan and the championship win of the ANZ Touring Cars. Kent Bajan wins. In second place is Leo Leonard, who finished third in this race, and Neville Crichton making it possible for Kent Bajan to win by staying between the two of them.
Third will probably be Bruce Anderson in the championship, and I'm sure when we see Kent Bajan, we'll see an arm out the window, an absolutely elated driver.
Well, I know from talking to Kent in the last couple of days that this has been very, very important to him psychologically as a build-up to the Nissan Sport races. Leo Leonard did all the work early on the South Island, and the car wasn't perhaps as competitive as they would have liked. And the BMW is just simply more competitive as Bruce Anderson comes through for fourth place in the race. But Kent Bajan, I'm sure, will be feeling $1 million, and there might be a little bit of champagne flowing tonight as Kent Bajan takes out the ANZ Touring Car Championship overall by 2 points from Leo Leonard. What a wonderful way to start a season, or to finish a season, shall we say, for the BMW 635s.
Well, he had bad luck in the first two Benson Hedges rounds, won the Benson Hedges, and here he is winning the ANZ Touring Car Series now. Everything going for him. Great season.
Initially, when the cars came here, there were some minor problems in getting them sorted. The odd engine that went astray. But since that, these cars, neither has had a problem with reliability. They have been excellent touring cars, whether in short races or in the longer 6-hour races.
Full marks also to the John Andrew team. They've certainly kept Kent honest in the races, made really close, exciting races. And as I say, full marks to John Andrew and Ray Stone for making the guys work for it.
In just a moment, we'll try and get a word with the man who I'm sure will have a smile from ear to ear. He has worked very, very hard indeed to win this championship. He went to Macau and he got competition against top internationals in similar cars to learn just what could be done with the BMW 635. There is not a lot of knowledge in New Zealand about these cars. Most of the knowledge in Neville Crichton's team came from Frank Gardner in Australia. Although the team has been well run by Ray Stone here, there is not a lot of local knowledge about these cars because they have not been run in New Zealand before this year. We'll be back a little later on with the last Pacific race, which again is going to decide the championship. We'll be back as well to have a word with Kent Bajan, who has just won the ANZ Touring Car Championship. Meantime, let's go to Peter in the studio.
And not far from a start now in the second leg of the double and the second leg of the treble at Ellerslie. It's the day's feature sprint event, the Railway Handicap over 1,200 metres. A Silver Rhapsody taking out the first leg of the treble, of course, and Secured Deposit taking the Auckland Cup, the first leg of the double. Let's now see the second legs of both the treble and the double. The Railway, here's Philip and Grant.
Always proved to be one
All predictions earlier on in the season has won the ANZ Touring Car Championship. Let's have a word with him. Graham Booth down in the pits.
Well, Kent, I'd say this would have to be one of the best days of your motor racing career so far.
Oh, it's certainly a very, very nice one indeed, yeah. To clinch the third one and take the ANZ series, it's very nice indeed.
At the start of the season, would you have believed that you were going to take the B&H and this?
Well, we didn't take the entire B&H, we only took the Pukekohe one. Of course, Neville Crichton took the series, but no, we're always hoping, of course. You're always full of hope in motor racing. It's nice to get the work together and the car together and get it all there on the day to finish.
And what are you hoping for now, Kent?
Well, of course, we're hoping for the Nissan Sports Series that's coming up. We're going to be very interested on the 27th of February and on the, I think it's the 27th of January, 3rd of February. There's a lot of overseas drivers coming in. We've just been to Macau. We've had a little bit of experience up there. Been doing a lot of work on the car back here, so I think that between Neville and Leo and some of the other boys that we're going to see New Zealand drivers taking the Nissan Series also and beat the Australians.
But of course there's some pretty stiff opposition coming from overseas, isn't there, Ken?
There is, but I think that they might come and underestimate the little old Kiwis down here, and we hope we give them a fright.
Why do you reckon you've got an advantage?
We don't think we've got an advantage, but I think that the amount of teamwork that we've been doing, they've finished their season in Europe, of course, in November. In Australia, I don't know how much racing that we've been doing there lately, but we've just actually seen come through our series, and we're all fairly well fine-tuned. Our team for changing and pit crews and ourselves are all feeling, you know, quite fit.
Well, Ken, congratulations, a fantastic win.
Thank you very much indeed, and I'd just like to say thank you very much to the ANZ Bank for their tremendous sponsorship for the series. We hope to see it next year, and I think they'll see a tremendous amount of cars up there. And I'd also like to say thank you very much to TELUS Vacuum Cleaners. TELUS has been my sponsors. Their contract with us is now finished, and we're looking for a new sponsor for the Nissan Sports Series. Thank you very much indeed.
Kent Bajan, the overall series winner and a late entrant to the series, doing it extremely well in style in the BMW 635. The man who was leading coming into today on the points table, but ends up finishing second overall, is the man who finished third in the race, Leo Leonard.
Well, Leo, second in the series by just 3 lousy points. How do you feel?
No, well, naturally we're disappointed, but we've had a good series. The boys have made a magnificent job of preparing the car, and I'm really thankful for them for the opportunity to be able to drive it. We would have really liked to have won for them, but we didn't get there, and there's only one winner.
At any stage there, did you think it might be possible that you could nail one of the BMWs?
If the day hadn't been so hot, it's on a big heavy car, the tyres get more punishment and the brakes get more punishment, and we progressively get slower and slower as the race progresses, and whereas the lighter car gets faster and faster. So we didn't think we had much of a chance unless they had a problem with one of the cars.
Where do you think you'll go from here, Leo? Stick with the big Ford, or might you try something a bit different?
No, I like the Fords, and I certainly like the big cars, so if I get the opportunity to drive something, well, I hope it is a Ford.
And the Nissan Sport races?
Nothing confirmed as yet.
But you'll be having a go?
No, not at this stage, but if the opportunity arises, I'd enjoy the drive there.
Well, Leo, I certainly hope we will see you there. Congratulations. Second place, of course, is better than nothing.
Thanks very much.
Probably New Zealand's best-known name in saloon car racing over many years, Leo Leonard from Timaru. Very clever driver. We'll be back at about 5:10 with the last Pacific race of the day, which winds up the champion race in the championship. Leading the points is John Crawford, who has an almost unassailable lead from Kevin Ingram on 45, Craig Coleman, who is the newcomer, who's done exceptionally well, third on 29. Lou Sholem has 26, Richard Lester 15, and Glenn Clark 15. And as a result of having won this championship, John Crawford will get a trip to England and a start in the Formula Ford race at Silverstone in the British Grand Prix in a car supplied by Ford of England.
John Crawford on the screen now, the number 2 car. He's also running Pacific today, and here's the start. Start in hands, and they're away. Steve Richards in pole position, the red car into the screen immediately in front of you. Outside of him, Craig Coleman, car 17, the blue car. Dropped it behind John Crawford. And in 4th place, that would be Chris Abbott. In fact, it's Kevin Ingram. Now here we have the battles down the back. Craig Coleman and Steve Richards, the new lap record holder for the Bay Park circuit. Diving for the inside now, Steve, and almost three abreast for 3rd spot. But there it is. Steve Richards holding narrowly this lead to young Craig Coleman. This is the vintage Formula Ford stuff that we've been used to see worldwide, side by side. Close racing for the young men, the champions of tomorrow. And here's Steve Richards. Now he's the current Formula Ford champion, or at least he was until today when John Crawford moved that championship from him. And this is in fact the best that car has gone all season for Steve. The Van Diemen, assembled by Graham Cook recently from parts obtained from overseas and made up locally, but it's actually a tremendous day for Steve to come through from a pretty fraught practice with some problems in the engine and gearbox. Now he's leading, but here's Craig Coleman having a dive up the inside.
While Craig Coleman takes over the lead, we could perhaps talk about this man who last year in Laser Sports wowed the crowds and a lot of the other competitors. this year in Formula Ford, his first year, and he has gone exceptionally well. Of course, he has a background in motocross riding. The famous Coleman name is he is one of that Coleman family from Wanganui. Was an exceptionally clever motocross rider, and certainly David has adapted to the track and cars very, very well.
Well, he's lost the lead, of course. Now Steve has taken the tighter line. I guess Craig will go up high on the outside and see if he can get a run down. Got very wide there, Craig. Lost a lot of ground. Series winner, Kevin Ingram John Crawford dropping away in third place now, out of your screen. But being fair to John, his mind is really with Formula Pacific today. He drove an excellent race in the first heat of the Formula Pacific Championship and finished 8th overall in his first ever Pacific race. He wasn't lapped. He certainly held his position very well. But here's his first and second battle. Steve Richards trying for all his might to lock out this young new charger.
Craig Coleman certainly does look to have the wherewithal to go places in single-seater racing. The way he's adapted to this Formula Ford car is exceptional.
Well, certainly he's picked up an amazing amount of experience in a very short period of time. He had his first race in Formula Ford at this circuit 9 months ago at Easter, and he now does things that really drivers of 3 and 4 years standing in this class capable of doing. But here he is. He's certainly giving Steve Richards knowing, and he's having a go for the lead. Up the inside. Nicely done. Great stuff, Craig. Well, he's the one that will be aiming next year, of course, to go in John Crawford's footsteps on this Driver to Europe scheme. And this is what's lifted this category of racing this year. 28 cars racing for the chance to go to the World Final at Silverstone Circuit, the Grand Prix meeting in July next year. And whilst this is actually the final championship round, as we've said, John Crawford has won the series. These boys are still anxious to settle a few outstanding grudges. Steve Richards, the previous champion, hasn't had that good season, but wants to show he's still capable of winning races well, and he's certainly leading this one well. Now here's John Crawford coming into contention in the Pro Helmets car. In spite of having to drive the faster Ford-engined Ralt RT1 car, he's also got this one on his plate, and that's not an easy task on the same day to drive two completely different single-seater cars. The skills required to do both competitively are quite remarkable. But here he is moving in on Craig. In fact, car 17, the blue car, is in fact John Crawford's car from last season, a Van Diemen. So you have now on your screen Van Diemen, and Reynard. There we've seen the benefit of the slipstream. Young Craig sat in behind Steve Richards, pulled out and turned in nicely. Bit of a lock-up from Steve Richards. So these boys are certainly going to battle it out, Tony, right to the end that way. And that's classic Formula Ford stuff.
Amazing how quickly John Crawford caught up in third place, made up an enormous amount of ground in the space of a couple of laps and gone.
Well, that is the sort of thing we don't want to see, but let's wait. John Crawford's thrown his wheel off. He's out of the car, so that's the main thing. He's safe and sound. Well, that's a real shock, because John was saying only last week, I'm going to run the RT1 at Bay Park. I don't really feel I should race two cars. I could risk damaging it, but he'll be really upset about that now. It appeared as if he tried to make a passing maneuver on Craig Coleman and maybe have leapt over the wheel just coming out of the exit. It's very easily done, and there's certainly no chance. Here's the replay. Let's see if we can watch. I believe Craig will come into the turn. And there he goes, over the wheel, and that's what sets the car in motion. Very lucky not to roll that car completely into the banking. And if he moved those tyres, he's certainly done some damage, because those tyres really take some weight. So the Pro Helmets car looking a little bit second-hand. One race of the series. In fact, I think John has actually, up until today, won every race this season. John will be very upset about that. It's his own car. But here we have Steve Richards, Levi's car, now with a comfortable shoulder over Craig Coleman.
Amazing how little Craig Coleman lost in that.
Well, he'd certainly be wondering what on earth that red thing was that was flying over the top of him. It's a bit of a shock to the system when you see in a single seater someone coming across the top of you, Tony. But Steve's got the car tuned well, handling beautifully around the sweep, car number one. Number one, of course, for the champion of the previous season. Where's the number one for that following season? Craig second, then we have Kevin Ingram fighting it out now for third place with Charlie Thomason. Now, Charlie was actually in Formula Pacific last season, had a pretty unhappy time with engine troubles and one of other problems like that. But Charlie back in Ford, where he made his name, and he's fighting with the 1982 champion, Kevin Ingram. Kevin's right on form this year. Been unlucky to certainly not to win a few races. Right on the doorstep of John Crawford. But I'd like to think this race, excellent performance by young Steve. So we're coming into the final lap now of this 8th lap Motorcraft Championship race. This is the Formula Ford final. Steve Richards won't really make a dramatic change in the championship places. In fact, John Crawford has won by so much, no one could even make any impression upon him, even if he did have the accident he did. Craig Coleman running through that 62.8 seconds for a lap there for Steve Richards. So he's dropped back the pace of the first lap and he set a lap record. So he's going to probably just keep a cagey eye on Craig Coleman now. He's very good at leading races, Steve Richards. He's won a lot of races and he knows he's not going to give it away on the last corner. So here he comes, turn 4. Steve Richards, Rotorua. A great win, and there's the mechanics wrapped to see him take out that championship. Craig Coleman and Wanganui in second place, and third, probably a real cliffhanger between Kevin Ingram and Charlie Thomason. Can't tell it. I would think probably was Charlie Thomason.
Seems officialdom has given it to Kevin Ingram, so that's the finish. Steve Richards by a wide margin. Craig Coleman hanging on beautifully after that little coming together with John Crawford in second place. He hung on in the Van Diemen and crossed the line second. Kevin Ingram has been given third place from Charlie Thomason in fourth.
Craig is showing the skills that will make a Formula 4 driver into a good Formula Pacific driver. Look at the throttle control.
Jeff McPherson, Ken Smith, Ross Cheever or Davy Jones can all win the series. Once again, it is a 38-lap race, so there are many permutations. I know David Oxton and Reg Cook have been sitting beside me trying to work out all the ways that we could have a result, and as we said, the simplest result would be for Ross Cheever to win again, and then he clearly wins the series. But Davy Jones can still win, Ken Smith can still win, and Jeff McPherson. So for the first half of the race, it's going to be very important who gets into what position and whether or not Ross Cheever can stay out in front. David Oxton, Ross Cheever looked in the first race as though he could circulate like that all day. He certainly has taken a far more mature approach to his racing today than he has in the previous rounds, and really looks set to repeat that performance.
Well, certainly on paper, Tony, nothing seems capable of stopping the fellow today. Obviously, mechanically, we wish him well. We'd like to see all the competitors have a trouble-free run, because that way we get a better result and we can compare the drivers. But Ross's style has been very neat, very matured in this 4-race series. This is the big one, the big race, as far as the final, the countdown to the big thing. And of course, Ross Cheever, arguably, it means more to him to win this race, and therefore the series, than anyone else in the race. I mean, Davy Jones came here and cleaned up last year, did very well, and made a name for himself, as I say. Now, the chance is there for Ross Cheever to do the same. He's a very nervous young man. I spoke to him on the dummy grid just before the cars took off. He is nervous, but he acknowledges that he's got a chance. He's got a better than equal chance, better than most. And if everything goes his way, and if Jeff McPherson finishes no higher than third, he will win the series.
Looking at the grid from the front, number 2, Ross Cheever on pole. Beside him, Brett Riley, number 6. then Jeff McPherson, number 70, then Davy Jones, number 1, Ken Smith, number 11, Charlie O'Brien, number 3, Dave McMillan, number 41, John Crawford, number 8, Riley Hopkins, number 19, Tom Blackaller, number 5, and then on the back row, Peter Haskett, number 54, and Heather Spurl, number 12. Lined up, not yet on the grid proper. That's the 2-minute board going up for them. They'll move forward and come on to the grid proper very shortly. You've heard the siren go just now. So Ross Cheever in need of a good start and to be able to hang out there in front. I know Davy Jones is upset that he is back on the second row of the grid. He feels that he should be further up, but it's done on times, and Ross Cheever's 53.47 was the pole setter. Brett Riley had 53.94, just a tiny portion behind him. Then Jeff McPherson with 54.01, Davy Jones 54.02, Ken Smith with 54.31, and then Charlie O'Brien 54.52. The order of the first race in the finish was Ross Cheever first, Davy Jones second, and Brett Riley third. After Brett Riley had missed a gear change, Davy Jones got past him. Davy Jones was the quickest man on the circuit at that stage, gaining on Ross Cheever in the last couple of laps, but not quickly enough to get close enough to challenge him. Just a minute away from the start now.
This, of course, is the worst time for the driver. Right now, he knows it's up to him. All those hard-working teams have done all their best work. The cars are in their tip-top condition. It is the last race, the last chance for them to show off their abilities to their sponsors and to their fans. The hearts are really pumping, and they have to go through this agonizing 30 seconds now. The pulses will be beating, and they have this 100-yard spin of the wheels just to get a bit of rubber grip, to get the temperatures up a little. Then they select first gear and anxiously wait with their left foot on the floor, waiting for the start to drop. And it's
Brett Riley in the first race cut across the grid very quickly in front of Davy Jones. It'll be interesting to see what he does this time. Ross Cheever made an excellent start, and as I said, Brett Riley chopped right across, and Brett will be trying very hard to get into second position, not even first, as soon as the flag drops.
Waiting now for the flag to drop. The flag marshal must stand up there and hold the flag up for between 4 and 7 seconds to drop it. Hopefully nobody moves off the grid or rolls before he drops the flag, but once he's held it up, somewhere between 4 and 7 seconds before it drops. Nobody moving, a good clean start, nobody rolling forward on it. Ross Cheever away to an excellent start, Brett Riley tucking in right behind him, McPherson in third, Davy Jones fourth. A good clean start. Nobody was rolling before the start. Didn't even look like it. Ken Smith up there in 5th place. Cheever, Brett Riley, McPherson. Jones challenging McPherson already. Ken Smith. Might have been a little touch there between McPherson and Jones. Jones threw on McPherson very quickly indeed. He'll want to stay there desperately.
McPherson retaking that position, side-by-side racing. Great stuff for this opening lap of the Formula 6 Pacific final.
McPherson has a chance of winning this championship and trying very, very hard to get ahead of Davy Jones now that Davy Jones is in front of him.
Well, that's one of the obstacles out of Davy's way. He wasn't wanting to stay behind McPherson. Remember, in the first race, it seemed to hold him up and make his progress through the field a lot slower. But now we've got a clear three-way battle, and I think we'll see McPherson really play a percentage race and just watch with interest what happens with these top three men.
The difficulty also for Davy Jones was getting past Brett Riley. You see Davy Jones approaching Brett Riley there, driving very, very determinedly, and Brett Riley proved a very hard man to get past. He wasn't giving an inch, he was using all the road, and Ross Cheever gained some advantage in front, so that when Davy Jones eventually got past Brett Riley, he really had too far to chase him before the end of the race.
Ross Cheever, a very useful lead, going very, very high on the outside of the track, touching both edges of the track, on the outside going in, the inside coming out.
That's the way the race has started since the start, but behind him there have been all kinds of things happening. A number of places have changed in the last few minutes. Notably, Ken Smith has got past, first of all, Jeff McPherson, and then Brett Riley to be up to 3rd place. Ross Cheever is pulling away from Davy Jones in 1st place. The gap is increasing, and it remains to be seen whether or not Ken Smith can catch Davy Jones for 2nd place. But some very, very exciting driving while you were away, and Ken Smith going absolutely superbly. The most fired up we've seen him in years. There's Davy Jones locking up in the front right. He's in second place. And look at the gap now, back to third place, Kenny Smith.
This is a problem that both Ross Cheever and Davy Jones had in the first race with a locking brake, and obviously a problem to both cars. Now, this is the interesting battle for all of us in New Zealand. Kenny Smith now in third place and appearing to be closing on Davy Jones. Now, if Kenny Smith were to pass Davy Jones, we believe that would allow Kenny to take the lead in the series. Of course, a long way to go, a long race, and lots of interest here at Bay Park.
A lot of interest in the points, which are rather difficult to work out because they're all hypotheses at the moment until we have seen the result of both heats. Suffice it to say that if Ross Cheever can stay where he is and leave Davy Jones between himself and Ken Smith, in other words, to drive as a team, Ken Smith will be prevented from winning the championship. But if Ross Cheever has a problem, or if Kenny Smith can get past Davy Jones, then Ken Smith can win the championship.
Kenny Smith is driving a faultless race. I mean, compared with the other cars, you don't see him locking a wheel. He's driving very, very hard, true aggressive Ken Smith style.
And the other change down the line is that Jeff McPherson has got past Brett Riley. Brett Riley, who was third at one stage. Let's just have another look at Kenny Smith getting past Brett Riley, the most superb piece of driving we've seen from Ken Smith for a long time.
Kenny looking both ways, diving to the inside, leaving Brett no room to turn back. Brett, quite gentlemanly, knows that it's too late, neatly through, very close. A nice piece of overtaking.
In all honesty, this is the best drive we've seen from Kenny Smith for many, many years. He looked in the first race as though he possibly didn't have his heart in it. He has other interests in life other than motorsport, but he's really got his head down and backside up in this race, and he's going for it. Ken Smith knows that he can get a series win. He's got to get in front of Davy Jones, and we need Ross Cheever to have some kind of problem as well. As we said, if Ross Cheever can continue on his winning way, then he wins the championship. But Ken Smith really going for it.
Ross Cheever, as we said earlier in the series, has probably been arrived here with a reputation of being some sort of a crasher. And certainly the 4 weeks of racing in this country has matured him immensely. He's really loved the competition here, and already English team managers are taking notice of him. And in fact, Dick Bennett, well-known New Zealand racing team manager who operates out of London, recently asked me to watch out for this Ross Cheever and keep an eye on him. And I said, but isn't he the bloke that crashes a lot? And he said, don't worry about that. It's better to have a driver who's fast that you can slow down than to get a driver who's slow and make him go faster. And this is the man that he's talking about, Ross Cheever from the USA.
He certainly came here as the underdog to Davy Jones. After Davy Jones had made an enormous reputation last year in the series and dominated it completely, he came out and initially did the same thing here. He had such a big reputation that everybody said Davy Jones was the man to beat, and Ross Cheever was a little forgotten in the melee of that. But Ross Cheever has finished consistently after some nasty moments at Wigram and in the Grand Prix. He won the New Zealand Grand Prix and now has a very realistic chance of winning this series if he can stay on the road and not lock up wheels like he was doing a few minutes ago and drive a smooth race.
As we said in the first heat, Ross Cheever's car has got a new tub in it, or monocoque as you call it, and maybe if it had a new monocoque right from the word go, or no problems in the chassis right from the word go, that the gap that Ross Cheever had built up points would have been greater. Certainly the car is performing better and he's performing better, and I think it's a lot to do with his driving, but also to do with the handling of the motor car.
Bad luck in many ways for Davy Jones, who has, as we said, won 4 of the 6 races. You couldn't call him other than dominant in terms of the series, but the ones that he didn't finish have turned out to be the important ones. New Zealand Grand Prix, he didn't finish the races there because of the rain and 1,000 other reasons, and it has really cost Davy Jones dearly. He now looks like losing the championship if Ross Cheever stays on the road.
The hard fact of motorsport, probably no different than any other sport, is that people really only remember the last race. And if Ross Cheever were to win this race, certainly that is the one that's going to be the most current in people's minds.
There is Davy Jones.
Well,
Ross Cheever might have had a reputation for crashing, but in Formula 3 in England, he was capable of winning, I think, 2 races, maybe 3. And it's proven with Davy Jones the previous year, having come from Formula 3 in England, that it's a very good background and helps you be very competitive. And Ross was capable of winning England, and he's come out here and won as well.
Passing Heather Spurl now, Ross Cheever, lapping Heather Spurl, who was the slowest qualifier, her first start today in Formula Pacific. Had a good day too. Another who was having the first start in Formula Pacific today was John Crawford, who crashed in an earlier Formula Ford race, but he drove the first race very well indeed. Ross Cheever, the race leader, 1-2 for the John Brandon team at the moment, the 2 young Americans. That's Tom Blackwell. That's exactly the same place as he spun yesterday in practice. Almost getting in the way. Yesterday when he spun in practice on that very same corner, Heather Spurl was right behind him and managed to evade him beautifully. On that occasion it was Ken Smith who had to get out of the way.
Well, obviously this is the point of the race where the fatigue will start to set in. It's very, very hot in those cars. Now Ross Cheever will be thinking all of those things that he's been told by big brother Eddie. Cool it, take it easy. He knows it's nearly halfway through this final championship round, but he cannot make a mistake. He knows that the slightest error on this circuit, which has claimed a lot of cars, you cannot go wide on turns 1, 2 or 3 because you just run off into the wall, and we've seen that happen at the Grand Prix. A driver like that, Davy Jones, leading the race comfortably, and suddenly his lead evaporated into nothing. A few wheels were missing and end of the race. So he's watching those mirrors intently. He knows Davy Jones is after him, but...
Now we've just heard from the John Brandon pits that gap of 2.2 seconds that was on lap 15 between Davy Jones and Ross Cheever has now expanded to 8.42 seconds. So either Davy Jones is slowing down, and we'll confirm that in just a moment, or Ross Cheever has got quicker. Ross Cheever's times are the same, so Davy Jones has slowed off the pace just a little, which gives Ken Smith a better chance of catching him. Looking back now, look at that gap between Jones and Smith.
Well, this is vintage Smith driving. This is the typical Ken Smith. When the chips are down, he really goes for it. And he'll have his eyes set on the back, and it's, dare I say it, the old versus the young. And the old Wiley Fox will be after the young back and trying to make that second place a Kiwi place.
Kenny Smith trying very, very hard out of turn 1 onto the back straight and not making any mistakes. Kenny Smith, I think, also set his car up to go around that corner quickly, as did Ross Cheever, and as did Paul Radisich last year. So anybody who comes to the circuit sets the car up to go around the sweeper very quick is usually in a very good position in the race, and that's one of the things that Kenny Smith knows.
15 laps to go in this 38-lap race. And that gap now has widened between Ross Cheever and Davy Jones to 9.5 seconds. So Davy Jones really losing time at the moment, and obviously Ken Smith catching him, because Ken Smith is probably the fastest man on the circuit at the moment, and Davy Jones is losing time to Ross Cheever. Cheever will be staying on consistent lap times, and Ken Smith, as we said, the quickest man on the circuit at the moment.
Well, this is the sort of dream race that we look for in Formula Pacific. Close racing, fighting right to the last flag. And let's remember, Kenny can get up onto Jones and maybe pass him. Then the permutations could possibly give New Zealand the championship win, but a little bit soon to say.
Now we just heard that Davy Jones is lapping at 55.5. which is well off the pace that he needs to be going to stay where he is.
Yes, Kenny Smith appears to be closing in out of the tight corners. I'm just wondering whether Davy Jones might have lost one of his gears.
Both these 84 Ralt RT4s, that's the John Brandon cars, are having trouble with brake lock. And you'll see the cars are very loose. The boys are trying so hard, but on that infield hairpin, we call it turn 3, both Ross Cheever and Davy Jones are locking their right front wheel nearly every other lap, and it's possibly something they can't adjust out of the car because it's happening to one wheel only. If it was happening to both front wheels, the bias could be adjusted within the cockpit. So it's a measure of the effort that Davy Jones is putting in to stay in front of Ken Smith now.
Ken Smith is fired up, and he's trying very hard as well, braking exceptionally well to get close to Davy Jones down in this corner as we're going into it now. Kenny Smith closes right in the braking.
Ken Smith's last 3 laps have been 54.2. Davy Jones has slowed on the last one to 55.5. And we understand there is a new lap record. We'll get that confirmed for you in just a moment.
Kenny Smith's very close indeed. I would give him 1 lap and he'll be in the lead. He's able to take the pass Davy Jones at the same pace as he passed Jeff McPherson and Brett Riley.
Well, this is the dream moment for Ken Smith. He's been saying all series, if only I could get up onto the back of that Davy Jones, I'm sure I can rattle him and get past him. He's been saying that all along.
Talking about being rattled, Davy Jones is looking in his mirrors every second, all the time, and he's very concerned about where Kenny Smith is.
Possibly a slight power advantage up the long back straight for the Davy Jones car, but Kenny closes up under these hairpin turns, and let's look for the brake lock. Is there any brake lock this time? Just a smidgen of brake lock there for Davy, and that's where Kenny closes right up under braking.
Yes, if Kenny gets a good run out of the corner before he'll pass him there. These two exceptionally close, good drivers, driving this close. They've got to have confidence in each other.
Well, it would appear to me that Ken Smith's car is in fact set up for the slower turns and Davies for the faster turns. Davies is pulling away around the sweep. He opens up a little comfort brake there. And now up the long back straight, Kenny just has to sit and wait till the next hairpin turn.
Just news of that lap record. It is not a new lap record, but Ross Cheever on lap 26 equals Roberto Moreno's existing lap record of 53.8. So he was obviously on very, very good time. And this late in the day, that is a really exceptional time to be equaling Roberto Moreno's lap record.
There's Kenny up the inside.
Yeah,
and the crowd are going wild with excitement here.
Exactly where we expected him, where he did it to Brett Riley and Jeff McPherson. Kenny Smith took the chance and went through.
And now we have to start working on the points permutations. I think Ross Cheever will still hold the lead. Ross Cheever will still win the championship unless Ken Smith can get past him. But Ken Smith, having got past Davy Jones, really puts paid to Davy Jones's chances of winning it. At the moment, it looks like Ross Cheever to win the series. If they stay the way they are, Davy Jones will be second and Ken Smith third. But having got past Davy Jones, Ken Smith has just destroyed the chances that Davy Jones had of winning the championship.
Well, on our computation, which we'll have to treat as purely unofficial, let's watch this replay of this beautiful outbraking. Kenny has just demoralised the 19-year-old Davy Jones by going under him at the infield hairpin in a classic braking manoeuvre, no lock-up and accelerating away. Very, very good driving.
Yes, that is not an easy manoeuvre to do. Every racing driver would like to be able to do that, but on this circuit it's not easy. Kenny Smith, even with his 40 years of age, has been able to do it.
In second place, and it's really a copybook of the first race where Davy Jones got into second and just didn't have enough of the race left to close that gap on the front runner, Ross Cheever. Well, this time it's Ross Cheever again, and this time Ross Cheever is on exceptionally fast lap times, just lapping beautifully, so Ken Smith really doesn't have enough of the race left, I don't think, to try and catch Ross Cheever. Ross Cheever will be getting signals from his pit to let him know how far behind him Ken Smith is. Ken Smith has just done another 54.2 lap, 54.26. So he's obviously on the same kind of times as Ross Cheever. So that the only way he can catch Ross Cheever is if he slows a little or if Kenny can find an extra tenth somewhere. And there is still not enough left of the race. There's the gap back to second place now. That's how much lead Ross Cheever has. Here's Ken Smith up the back straight. That's the gap first and second. But Ken Smith holding New Zealand's flag high, and the crowd just went absolutely berserk as he got past Davy Jones.
This has been a good circuit for Kenny Smith. He's been here many times and been the crowd favourite because he's always been competitive with the overseas stars for many years. He hasn't always won races, but he's always usually been the only New Zealander who could hold his head high against the overseas stars, except for Paul Radisich the previous year.
Well,
Well, Reg Cook, with his human computer, has come up with the theory now that, in fact, the positions remain the same. Ross Cheever would win the series with 56 points, from Davy Jones with 53 points to Ken Smith with 52 points. But remember, they've all got to finish, and there's a long way to go yet.
That's how close the championship is at the start of this race. Any one of four could have won it. As David has just said, if they stay the way they are on the track, this man, Ross Cheever, will win the International Series and take back to Europe with him an enormous boost at trying to get sponsorship money and people to manage him in a team.
Well, you can see Ross Cheever doing exceptionally well in Formula 3 if he's in Big Fenton's team next year.